Welcome to PodScure.
All right, welcome, everybody. Back to another episode of PodScure with Don and Dean. How you doing, buddy?
You mean today,
Yeah,
or
well, I mean, did you have another day you'd prefer to talk about, or
well, we could talk about yesterday.
what happened yesterday?
So the fourth weekend of the month of September is typically the oyster run for motorcycle enthusiasts to ride up to.
Did oysters get legs somehow?
No, it's
Okay.
a run with motorcycles means like a rally.
Oh, okay.
So,
Like the Klan.
Not like the Klan. I mean, look, there are probably racist motorcyclists, motor
No,
enthusiasts.
what?
There are also a lot of really nice motorcycle enthusiasts.
All right, fine. I'll allow you to have that one.
I don't know where you think you're going, but you better knock it off.
Well, it looks like
You can do that.
we have a guest today.
We do.
We do. Shall I introduce him?
Is he near?
Oh, he
Or
is.
Is
very
he near?
He's very near.
Wait. Is he near? Or is he far? Is he near? Or is he far?
Well, let's find out. How about that, shall we?
Let's bring him on.
All right. Welcome, everybody, to PodScure Podcast, where we have today with us Jay Smith from A History of Rock and Roll in Film and Rock and Roll. Jay, how you doing, man? Good to see you.
Dean, how are you? Don, how are you doing?
What up, my brother?
Oh, Donnie, can you hear me? Can you feel me near you or far?
Don
near,
Quixote.
or far?
Don
Donnie,
So-
can you hotey?
So, Jay, before we get going off the rails, why don't you tell everybody where we can find you? So I like to do all that up front, so we, in case I forget it at the end, because as I say, we get off the rails quite often here, and I'd like to make sure we got you covered. What?
There's rails.
Maybe there could be.
Or was I supposed to take notes?
Maybe.
Were you supposed to bring the rails? Is that what I'm hearing?
Maybe.
Did you neglect to provide rails for us to stay upon?
I definitely do not approve of rails.
Gotcha.
Oh, these old rails.
You can find me on the Apple, on the Spotify, on the Google podcast, on the iHeartRadio podcast, on the Stitcher, on the Libsyn, at A History of Rock and Roll in Film and Rock and Roll, because we are, I say we, meaning myself, as an entity, are fairly new in the podcasting world as of just February of this year.
Very nice.
You're gonna get search results that are older rock and roll history podcasts first. You might have to scroll through that don't even match close to the name, but I'm in there, and
Yeah.
we're picking up steam finally. It's been a pretty good sort of jog upward since
on.
February. But yeah,
Right on.
and then Just the Worst Ever on Instagram. Also play in a band called Late September Dogs that Don knows about, and play in a band called the Double Cross Committee. We are Double Cross Committee is on bandcamp.com as well until the new album is done and the other new recordings of that are done. Hopefully I'll have that on Bandcamp someday in the next year or so.
Excellent. Yeah, I just I saw that your latest episode, or at least the last episode that I saw, you did Maximum Overdrive with AC/DC, which is
Thanks.
probably one of my favorite B-level movies with a great soundtrack.
Sure. Ironically, to me, it's funny because it's an unnerving sounding AC/DC soundtrack. It is not classic AC/DC
No.
sound. It's extra gated reverb on the snare, lots of extra echo on the guitars. It's very mid 80s production. It's not what your go-to. It's not a go-to. And the whole point, it's funny, like the whole point of me doing that episode was supposed to be one episode about just that uncomfortable era of AC/DC's history. And I I couldn't do it. I had to go back to the beginning and go through a whole bunch of stuff with Bon Scott because that's my favorite era. I haven't even finished the trilogy yet. I've got there's 2.5 hours that I have no access to right now because my hard drive took a shit and died.
Oh boy,
last week.
That sucks.
But I finally got to on that third episode that's not published yet. I got to the Who Made Who, Flick of the Switch, Fly on the Wall era of AC/DC.
Which as well, not my favorite era.
Nobody's favorite era.
Thunderstruck.
That's the end of the. That's them rising up. So here's how I sort of bookend it in my narrative is, Mutt Lange, the high profile producer, got them big hits with Back in Black and Highway to Hell. Mm-hmm. And then they refused to work with a high level producer until Razor's Edge in 1990. They had all through the 70s worked with their older brother and his buddy from a previous band he used to be in, Harry and George, Vonda and Young. They were responsible for all their momentum up until Highway to Hell, which Mutt Lange took over. And then they were like, well, we have to prove that our success is not because of a hotshot producer. So we're going to do it. We're going to work with lower level guys. And it shows for quite a few years. So Bruce Fairburn is the guy that kind of brought them out of the doldrums with Razor's Edge, because he had done Slippery When Wet. He had done Aerosmith's Pump. And that was sort of like, then it's back. Like the magic, the high profile magic is back, but it still sounds like AC/DC. It doesn't sound overproduced, but
yeah, I love pretty much all AC/DC. I mean, even yes, I like, honestly, I like, Back in Black is probably one of my favorite albums. That era, it just takes me back to when I was
defending the indefensible position, Dean. That's what we like about you. You got the hot takes. You're taking a stand.
It takes me back to like 7th grade when I think it's 6th, 7th grade when that came out for me. So yeah, that was kind of my first introduction to AC/DC was that. So yeah, I loved it. I played it a lot. I had a very odd set of 8 tracks, whether it was AC/DC, whether it was Led Zeppelin or the Eagles or Dr. Hook. You name it. I had so many of them, and they were very kind of eclectic. I mean, I think honestly, the first rock album that I ever bought was the first Boston album.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm really sorry. I don't know what the hell is happening right now, but both dogs are sitting on the couch just staring at me.
Yeah.
Did you not feed them?
No, they've been fed. They just got fed. I figured this might be a marathon episode, so
keep them close. Yeah.
I don't know what's happening. Well, you're up to something. I can see it. Anyways,
it's like Tammy's staring at you and Bean's staring at Tammy.
No,
now they're both staring at you.
It's like I've got chocolate or something, and I don't have what. What are you looking at?
What's Daddy doing?
I think they've just been told that you're not their real father.
I'm not Jafaja.
Like somebody, yeah. Tommy on the bus said that you're not our real dad.
Well, he's right, but that's okay. I love you both the same.
Yeah. Apologize if I came in a little late and a little hot. I was cramming some study materials before this for the podcast. I've watched the first hour and 15 minutes of the complete Republic serials from 1946 of the Crimson Ghost, which is part of my 3-pronged attack for Halloween for my Misfits episode. It's going to be the monster from Green Hell, Teenagers from Outer Space, and the Crimson Ghost, which is where they got their skeleton, face logo.
The double lock.
Yeah, and he's like this turncoat spy sort of espionage character that's trying to develop an atomic device, and it's amazing. It's amazing to watch. Lots of good punch ups, lots of good car chases, and then I was also jumping into Light of Day, starring Joan Jett and Michael McKean and Marty McFly, and directed by Paul Schrader of Taxi Driver fame. And boy, oh boy, if you want to take like peak, popularity, Michael J. Fox and Michael McKean and put them in a dour, depressing family drama of a movie with no laughs and no levity whatsoever and lots of discomfort. This is the movie for you. And it's very hard to find, but I got a YouTube copy of it, and I'm hanging in because I know at one point Trent Reznor shows his face for like
What
3
the
seconds.
hell?
Yeah, he plays a nerdy keyboard player in a crappy bar band, I guess, at some point. And that's like, so I'm doing an extra Joan Jett sort of bit of research for my Runaways episode, which I've already written up.
Ridded.
That movie sounds like some maniacal Kids, Gummo, and Buffalo 66 kind of
before it was cool to do that. Before it was, yes, in a non-stylized version, just sort of a mopey late 80s Cleveland, Ohio. And there's a scene where Michael J. Fox wakes up to the like alarm clock radio, and it's some other version of that song Cleveland Rocks that became the Drew Carey Show theme song.
Oh Jesus,
That's funny.
Yeah, it was a real tune by somebody. I got to find out who now, but
Yeah, I thought that was made for the show.
I know.
I did too. I'll be honest, I never thought about that song.
The Presidents. The idea that a Seattle band called the Presidents of the United States of America wrote an anthem for Cleveland in the mid-late 90s. But no, they did not. They did not.
What show was I at? It was like, I think it was Stone Temple Pilots and Gwen Stefani, and I think that seems right.
Mhm.
And the presidents of the United States of America were the opening act.
Oh my gosh.
And they came on stage, and their lead singer said, "Hi, we're Pearl Jam," and like 20 people around me were like, "It's Pearl Jam." I'm like, do you not see that is not Pearl Jam?
Yeah.
That is not.
It's 3 guys and 4 strings. It's definitely not Pearl
exactly.
Jam.
And maybe 2 chords. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know. I don't
Who
know anything
knows?
about music.
Yeah, I'm not a mathematician.
I don't even think about math.
So what's coming up on your show? I mean, aside from the ones that you just mentioned, I mean, like,
Yeah.
So, and I don't know how many episodes you're in right now, but I mean, things that I'd be curious about as a new listener would be like Spinal Tap, of course, because there's some amazing music in there. Just for a parody movie, that's pretty damn good music.
Yes.
Absolutely. And, and like
Heavy metal.
Heavy metal.
Oh God, heavy metal. Yes, both of them. I mean,
line-
because you could do both of them because there's lots of good music there.
Yep. And in line with heavy metal is a Rock and Rule, which was a Nelvana animated feature that was Canadian made, and there's like a Canadian cut and an American cut. I'm finding out for animation nerds, but it has the music of Cheap Trick and Blondie, Lou Reed,
Nice.
and Iggy Pop. And I started watching it over a year ago, and I was like, I have to stop this and make someone else watch this with me because it's so surreal to see a post-apocalyptic science fiction fantasy cartoon with anthropomorphic mice characters playing in a heavy rock band, and at a time when there was so much late 70s like drugs and optimism about the power of electric music. There's like this, they're trying to open like a trans-dimensional gateway with the power of rock and roll. And it's just this funny, silly end of the dream pre-MTV time where these 70s arena bands are still kind of changing their sound to be more overproduced and reverby and in a way that's not classic when you think of those bands at all. And it's like this whole power of rock and roll music is going to change the universe, But yes, I've got about 15 episodes now. I've got episodes I've written or taken the notes for and haven't recorded that from back when I started this idea. And they turned out to be so challenging that I kind of jumped into, I found my gimmick better when I realized it's easier when there's a movie with a wacky story behind the making of, as well as an artist with a really exciting story about a certain time in their career. And if I can tie them together, then all the better. But like I've got an Elvis episode based on the John Carpenter film that a lot of folks don't know about with Kurt Russell starring as Elvis.
Why? What?
Because because Elvis died and left a real shitty, pun intended, taste in everyone's mouth. And Dick Clark decided he was going to wash that out of our brains by commissioning a made-for-TV ABC film by a relatively unknown director, John Carpenter, with a former Disney child star, Kurt Russell.
I think I kind of remember that.
That began their partnership. That's the reason why they did all those movies together after that.
Funny.
But yeah. Blackboard Jungle, which is sort of my Bill Haley in the Comets episode, has been sitting in the notes for a long time. I honestly figured there was a lot more rock and roll in that film because of what I'd read about all the crazy reactions to it. Turns out it's really just the intro and the outro. Everything else in it is not about rock and roll, but it's about juvenile delinquency in the 50s, and it's an amazing film. Young Sidney Poitier fucking steals the whole show.
Hold on. Everything about rock and roll is all about, rebellion in the 50s and 60s.
Well, absolutely.
Absolutely.
I was under the impression it was like one of these movies like, The Girl Can't Help It or Rock, or all these films that were made to get like rock and roll artists on the screen, right? There's a lot of those kind of like, nice people at a club and they're watching Gene Vincent and his Blue Caps and then they're watching Little Richard and then they're watching Chuck Berry. But it wasn't. It's a very gritty inner city drama that just happens to start with the song Rock Around the Clock. And when they played it in theaters, kids went bonkers to the extent that like after one weekend, like theaters stopped playing the intro. They just cut it because they didn't want, because like these kids just started cutting up the seats and stuff and fighting with each other, I guess. And
that's hilarious.
Getting pregnant
over Rock Around the Clock.
I went and saw Boston, like their last tour in Seattle, and
like the corporate America era or whatever it was called, or
I don't remember.
Their last album as far as maybe they didn't even tour on that one. I don't know.
I don't think they.
I was
did.
like that was because that was like early 2000s or 2010 or something like that.
Yeah. See, it was early 2000s, I think, or maybe even late 90s.
Okay.
I don't remember. There may have been mind-altering things and alcohol involved. But there were teenagers in front and behind us, and the teenagers in front were sitting with their parents, but the teenagers behind us were all alone. And through every song of the first 5 songs, they screamed. like Beatle-esque screaming, right? Like, I finally turned around and said, "Do you even know the name of this band?" And I terrified them because, bald, bearded, tattooed, yelling at the top of his lungs to shut the hell up. And,
like, were they from some Eastern Bloc country and they hadn't been allowed to like see rock and roll bands before or something?
I felt like they wanted to, like they were from the Midwest and had never danced to music before.
Right.
And
they came from that Footloose town.
Yeah, exactly. That's my story.
Yeah. But yeah, I've got a Valley Girl episode, which I'm glad I held off on.
Nice.
Because
if they attack the car, save the stereo.
I just saw the remake, not because I wanted to, but also
they did a remake of Valley Girl.
Yeah, fairly recently, starring Alicia Silverstone as a mother who catches her teenage daughter coming in late, and she does like the Peter Falk storyteller thing of like, oh, you think you don't want to hear this story? Well, let me tell you a story. And then she recounts her early 80s Valley Girl experience as a retelling of the original. But the difference is in this one, they just do it full like musical style. So it's not like in Valley Girl originally where there's a bunch of unknown bands that got some airtime and maybe got a couple of fans, but those bands didn't really last that long and they're still pretty obscure. This is like, it's like High School the Musical, but with songs by the Cars. Like pretty teenagers are like singing, "I don't mind you coming here," and they all break out in dance, stuff. And then I have I got Eddie and the Cruisers / Bruce Springsteen episode that I've been working on. I've got a Graham Parsons episode because of the film Grand Theft Parsons, which I saw back when it came out, but it's on YouTube for free, everybody, right now, if you want to watch that. If you want to remember Johnny Knoxville before he had too many hits to the head and
too many CTE.
Yeah, and he's like one of the better sort of cases in that in that jackass graduating class.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When it comes to CTE, and I started a CBGB episode
I was
like
going to ask you about that one.
a long time ago, and I there's so many good stories with those bands and in the book by Legs McNeil, Please Kill Me, that I couldn't decide what to focus in on. And I already knew I'm going to do a Ramones episode just about Rock and Roll High School, but I have to talk about the fact that in the CBGB movie, Linda, Johnny Ramone's widow, was furious about the fact that a Puerto Rican kid was playing Johnny, like, because he was so racist, and apparently she is too.
Wow.
Nice.
And they don't use any Ramones songs because for whatever reason they didn't want to pay for them. So when you see the Ramones playing on stage at CBGB in the film, they bust into one of Joey Ramone's solo songs, and it's like clearly produced in the early 2000s, clearly not a Ramones tune. But I figured I'll just focus on the Dead Boys, Talking Heads, and Television because those are the bands from that era and that movie that people don't, that like. I don't think they don't get enough ink, and I don't know enough about them to talk freely about them. So I figured to make myself do the homework. Other fun thing about that movie is there's a character in it, plays a local cop that's always harassing Severus Snape's character, Hilly Crystal, Hans Gruber, that actor.
Gibby.
Oh, yeah.
Alan Rickman. Alan Rickman.
Alan Rickman, yeah.
He's always harassing Alan Rickman's character, and he's this really grizzled guy, and he reminded me of the cranky granddad in Christmas Vacation, the National Lampoon, the one with the obvious hairpiece and the yes, that's as he said this, and he talks like this. But clearly not that guy because there's like a 25-year difference. But I'm like, who is this actor? And I looked him up, and he is the guy that plays Fun Boy in The Crow, who the person who in real life shot and accidentally killed Bruce Lee or Brandon Lee, which is another 4 episodes I've got to do. And I got so depressed. I was researching the whole Brandon Lee thing and the James O'Barr thing, the creator of The Crow. Both of them had tragic lives, and the whole story of The Crow is tragedy. And then the story of the filming is tragedy. And I went from that, working on that one, into working on singles and Chris Cornell and Andy Wood, and that's all tragedy. And I got so depressed, I had to put one of them in the can for a while and move on. So I moved on with the first 2 singles episodes. Those are done. I still got to do an Alice in Chains episode and like a Pearl Jam episode, among others, for singles. But yeah, the Crow episodes have been. I've been doing the research for a long time, but I'm going to do a 9 Inch Nails portion, a Joy Division portion, because James O'Barr, the author of The Crow, dedicated the book to Ian Curtis of Joy Division, because that's what he listened to when he was super depressed about losing his fiance. And then that gentleman, killed himself. So layer upon layer of tragedy and depression over and over and over again. And then I'm going to do I'm going to use a thinly veiled excuse to do a Pantera episode with The Crow because they have a cover song on there. But just to talk about stuff, or I can tie that in with Airheads, which I already did commentary for with our Don and I's friend Dan Tyson. Christmas this last year, Dan and I sat down and watched Airheads and recorded a commentary track for it. That's on the podcast. It's like the 2nd episode. So,
what about High Fidelity?
High Fidelity is a tough one. It's so already well liked and well known. And it's so self-referential. I don't know what else I can say about it that hasn't already been said within the movie itself.
True. In that case, Gross Point Blank.
Oh, love it. Yep. Great soundtrack. I have a friend that kind of got me into that one. Got me into listening to Criminy, Mirror in the Bathroom. Who's the band? Not the Specials, but
oh God.
that whole knife fight scene to Mirror in the Bathroom is amazing.
Yeah, with Benny the Jet Urquidez as the karate guy that he ends up facing. I can't remember the
the English Beat. That's who I'm thinking of.
Oh yeah. yes.
Yeah,
that's it.
Benny the Jet. Yeah, what's that gentleman? What else has he done? What am I thinking?
He did a lot of karate movies, kung fu movies in the 80s.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I remember seeing quite a few of those. I mean,
that movie and Tommy Boy might be the last good things that Dan Aykroyd ever did. I don't think I'm going out on a limb by saying that, but if someone else has something they can point to, I'll
I don't know. I don't know what he's done since then. So
I can't think of a thing he's done since then.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he was in for a minute of that the Ghostbusters movie.
Sure.
I think that's about it.
The remake?
Yeah, with the what's her name?
No.
Kate McKinnon and
Kate McKinnon. Yeah.
No, just no. I have no interest. No interest.
good for you.
It's a classic that did not need to be remade.
I defended that movie before it even came out, and then I saw it and realized, well, it's time to give up that fucking fight. But
What about Highlander?
Queen, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Only
I
the-
guess I'm
Only the
trying
first
to
one
time-
though. Only
Yeah.
the first
Yeah.
one.
The other ones don't exist.
Oh, I thought part 2 was the good one.
Oh, you mean with Mario Van Peebles?
I thought it was
Guns
like
don't kill people. Mario Van Peebles.
It's like Rambo. It's like the second one is the biggest betrayal of the whole point of the first one.
It literally it takes the whole Highlander story about him being from the Highlands of Scotland, and turns him into a scientist from space that was trying to solve the pollution problem.
Oh, dude.
And came up with some Xenu type force field around the Earth.
Yeah, it's like they retconned how they retconned in Star Wars the whole midichlorian bullshit.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, it's that, don't you love it when Hollywood does this thing where they clearly have, a bankable property without a story to advance a franchise. So they just take someone else's idea. Like somebody couldn't sell their screenplay for another movie, and then they just like swap the title for it and clearly graft it on to a pre-established, property for a fan base that's ready for a sequel.
Yeah. Right.
So is it? Oh, go ahead, Doc.
No.
I was just going to ask: is it only rock and roll that you deal with, or so there's some? As Quentin Tarantino has a lot of great R&B stuff in a lot of his movies.
Well, and to me, it's got to be a movie that is rock and roll or deals with rock and roll, not just that it has a soundtrack with rock and roll songs. So like I'm gonna do for the disco influence, I'm gonna get into Car Wash. There's a movie called Thank God It's Friday. It's like, what can I buy a new book about? And what can I tie that to?
According to my wife, you can buy a new book about anything that you want.
Yeah. I mean, some of them, to me, it was like, my first fear was like, well, I'm going to run out of biopics to do, because like the original impetus was like, well, there's all these great biopics of like different rock artists. But then again, some of them just were part of that 80s boom of 50s nostalgia, right? The Buddy Holly story and Richie Valens and La Bamba, and then Great Balls of Fire was the first 2 episodes I did with Dennis Quaid. And actually, that leads me to a sidebar I'll get back to. But to me, it's like it should deal with rock and roll in the theme or the point of the story. Some of the more tangential ones that I'm stretching that premise a bit are going to be like Repo Man, which is one of the most rock and roll films ever. But I also love the juxtaposition of Repo Man versus Valley Girl, because Valley Girl, you've got all these young, still good looking parents trying to be friends with their kids and like have parties for their kids. And then in Repo Man, you've got like the zombie parents that just gave all their kids' money away to a televangelist and are totally disconnected from like that's the more real version of, what they're, kind of doing with Valley Girl. But yeah, Repo Man, because I can talk about the history of bands like the Circle Jerks and Black Flag and the Vandals and things like that I've, got to sort of get caught up on. But yeah, when it came to like the Misfits, it's even more of a stretch because I'm just using movies that they took names of songs from or their image from, but it feels relevant anyway. But I also don't feel like anyone needs another middle-aged white guy on a podcast telling them to get into Tarantino movies. Like I think that's covered pretty well.
Not so much.
I've got like let's see some other idea. I've got a ton of ideas from like lists I've downloaded of weird wacky films to check out. I watched last year I watched Suburbia, and god damn it, that's a bummer. That's a real bummer. It's Penelope Spheeris's first film that wasn't a documentary. She did the Fall of Western Civilization films.
Oh, okay.
And she did Wayne's World. But it's just about these like punk rock kids living in LA and in like abandoned houses and stuff, and how miserable their life is because they're kind of orphaned or whatever, and they like put on shows, and there's a bunch of punk bands that play that I need to learn more about. And then and Flea is in it. It's one of a ton of movies he's in, but he plays one of the main sort of, well, I guess main supporting characters in it. So, but it's super dour, depressing. It's very clearly her first film, and it relies heavily on non-actors just giving out lines and stuff. But it's also funny to me to like watch these burnout young, like white kids from suburbia LA in the 80s talking about how bad they have it when there's like free houses to move into. Like there's so many just stories of LA punk where like, oh yeah, we rehearsed in this abandoned church for free for like 2 years. Like, what the fuck, dude? Like they had a million places to play, but then when they would play, the cops would come and beat the shit out of everybody, which totally sucks, you know?
Yeah.
But,
Well, it's LA. What'd you expect? And that's what the cops do there.
And it's also, and they make a good point in one of the documentaries about a place called the Cuckoo's Nest at the time where like, look, these are, and I think it is dude from the Circle Jerks and Black Flag, who points out that like, look, these are the cops that ran all the hippies out of town 20 years before this, or 15 years before this. Like they brutalized the counterculture kids when they had long hair. And now we were the new counterculture kids and we had mohawks and shaved heads and spikes and stuff. And they were not about to have that like take root in their community either. So
yeah,
business as usual for them.
Exactly. Yeah. It's all the divergent.
Yeah. And to that, and to the rebellion, you know, I've got a whole playlist on YouTube of like 50s rockabilly drag racing movies to watch.
There we
So
go.
I can get my
I played in a few rockabilly bands over the last, well, for probably about 10 years after I moved here. So I was an upright bass player.
Nice.
So
you always have a job then.
Well, I sold the upright bass. I got out of music.
How dare you?
Yeah, well, you know, shit happens. You know, when I got really, really burned out and was not in a good place. So I basically, that's why I turned to podcasting, because I knew I had all sound gear.
Right.
And I said, hey, I can do this and I don't have to fucking go anywhere.
Yeah. I mean, there's a large part of this that represents the same thing for me too. You know, I mean, everyone in a band has been busting their ass forever. You know, you can't take that away from anybody, but
True.
It just feels like, you know, older you get, the less return there is on anything. And you still feel like just banging your head against the wall, trying to get people to pay attention to you. And it's only for 45 minutes maximum. And then you got to pack up and, you know,
and get the fuck out.
They were hang around. In my case,
split the
stand around.
$6.
Yeah. In my case, you know, feel guilty for not bringing enough people and feel like no one even got to hear your vocals anyway. So why didn't I spend this time working on a record instead? And when I do get a record done, who's going to even fucking hear it? And who am I going to put it out? And enough parking lot conversations.
Artistry.
Yeah. Enough parking lot conversations with other musicians telling me, man, you're like a librarian when we talk about rock and roll or movies or whatever. And finally I was like, maybe I should do something with all this, you know, knowledge and impulse to gab. And
that's a good way to do it.
You know? Yeah.
So do you have, are you interviewing folks from those movies, whether the bands or the directors or whatever?
No, I don't have like a line on those kind of people. The best one I've got coming up, I think, is Dan Tyson from Late September Dogs. He knows a gentleman who was the live sound engineer for the Alice in Chains like live set during Singles. So I just bought the Blu-ray recently, and it has as a special feature the uncut concert footage of Soundgarden and Alice in Chains from that movie, like the whole set of each one, doing like maybe three to four songs a piece or whatever it is.
Nice.
So I'm excited to interview him. I had Dan and Brian Timpey over to my place just to interview them about the history of shred guitar, because I want to do a Crossroads episode. And I already know about Robert Johnson, but I don't know much about shred music from the point of view of someone. I mean, I love metal and I love guitar playing, but I don't have the depth of passion and knowledge that they do about, like, I kind of came to them with like, look, fill me in on all this stuff that's like not progressive rock, right? But it's also not extreme metal or thrash metal, but it's definitely not glam rock either. What's this? How do I piece together this like Racer X Alcatraz? On how does that start out as something really cool and become something really lame by like 1992 when we get to like Kicks and like Trickster and these like other hotshot bands, you know, that are like trying to have their shred and girls
the
too.
butt rock bands.
Well, but the technically excellent like lead guitarist in a cheese ball sort of setup, but right, like you know, it's like, well, the natural
George Lynch
arena
and
rock.
Dokken.
Yeah, what?
Like George Lynch and Dokken.
Right. Yes, and that's a good example of like, you know, someone that only lead guitar players talk about who doesn't get enough credit, or if you talk to lead guitar players, maybe gets a little too much credit. But yeah, the guys that took what Randy and Eddie Van Halen did and just like made that their identity, as opposed to being in a catchy rock band that like had a couple of solos that were exciting technically.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, I dig, you know, like Joe Satriani. You know, his early stuff, Surfing with the Alien, all that stuff. I listen to that ad nauseum. I mean, and there's no vocal. I mean, it's just all. I mean, because he's an amazing guitar player, and him and Steve Vai, you know, kind of. I don't know. I think
he taught Steve.
right.
Stuff.
And
after Zappa taught Steve a bunch of stuff. Yeah,
right. I mean, and you
not a bad pedigree to have.
No, God, no. I mean, you could definitely tell the influence that Zappa had on Vai, even when going to Public Image Limited and him playing into that. So, which I thought was a very odd move, but
well, and I love Johnny Rotten's whole story. I'm planning to do Sid and Nancy as one episode with a young. You got a young Gary Oldman in that,
right?
God,
directed by Alex Cox, who directed Repo Man. Also, I believe it's either Slash and Duff McKagan or it's Slash and Steven Adler were hired in the talent pool as extras for Sid and Nancy. According to Slash's autobiography, they just showed up and got like the free catering and then did drugs and passed out somewhere off camera without actually being on film.
That's hilarious.
That's not rock and roll at all.
No.
No.
But what I was going to say about Johnny Rotten was, you know, I think he did PIL mostly because he came out of the Sex Pistols being trashed by his former bandmates and Malcolm McLaren, saying, "Oh, he wasn't important. He's not even really what the Sex Pistols are. What made us good. We're better without him." And he was like, "All right, what the hell are you guys going to do without me? Then I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to do the thing that like no one thinks I should do and get weirder and more technical and stranger." And meanwhile, he kind of looked back on them and like, yeah, if I was so not important to the Sex Pistols, how come none of those assholes have done anything that doesn't stomp all over that one album we made? They surely, if I was holding them back, they should have gone on to amazing heights of brilliance by now without me slowing them down. But turns out, no, I'm doing way more shit than they are. But yeah.
One of my favorite covers of a Sex Pistols song, which was Anarchy in the UK, is by a local band, a local honky tonk band, who did a regular honky tonk cover of Anarchy in the UK, and it's amazing. It was great. There was another one from out here, West Valley Highway, that did "Piss Up a Rope" by Ween.
Oh, beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, and they also did a honky tonk cover of Angel Fuck. So.
And that's one, you know, there's a lot of great material you can mine from the Misfits to turn into.
Oh, totally. It's very, very rockabilly 50s
Friendly.
Oriented. Yeah. Because even one of the bands I played in, we did Hybrid Moments as a rockabilly cover.
I mean, perfect song, perfect hook. I mean, catchy as hell and gross and violent.
Yeah, because what's funny about it is we play it like a rockabilly, almost honky tonk more. As you know, I would start off on the bass, doom doom doom, and James would be on acoustic and just start playing the riff. And then as soon as people start, it was funny because people would start realizing what he was singing.
Sure,
and
it's like
and everybody's holding their beers in the air.
It's that whole like screaming with me, talking, drinking a beer, talking. Then you hear, "When new creatures rape your face." I know what this song is. I know you tried to pull one over on me, Buster. Yeah.
That's similar to who is that friend of ours, Jay? That Chris Spillman.
Yeah.
He would play an acoustic set, and one of his songs was
the Poker Face or
Poker Face. Yeah, yeah,
Nice.
And it's just kind of a rock song, you know,
a ballady in a real cool, dark acoustic ballad kind of way. And then you're like, why do I think I know this? And then you would kind of get it. You're like,
oh, son of a bitch.
Love those. I mean, especially when you're liking it, and then you realize you're like, holy fuck, this is awesome.
yeah.
I love it when bands fix songs that were broken to begin with.
Hey, that's a good reference to Dan Tyson's intro to the Late September Dogs version of No Rest for the Wicked by Cage the
Correct.
Elephant.
Cage the Elephant, yes. Yes.
So now Don is of the opinion about covering songs
I'm of many opinions.
that I mean, unless you're
Yes,
an icon,
Tom Cruise sucks.
unless you're an icon, you should
Sure.
not be covering anybody's iconic song. How
Wait,
do you
wait,
feel
wait,
about
wait,
that?
wait, 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 wait,
Well,
wait,
okay,
wait, wait, wait,
you say it
wait.
your way.
Okay. Cover a song all you want. I'm fine with covering a song all you want. When you're a band that is selling, 1 million albums or whatever. Cover anything you want in concert.
Especially if you're getting those guys paid. I mean, if you're Metallica and you're getting Budgie or the Misfits or Diamond Head paid,
Right.
in ways that they never would have before, that's pretty cool, I think.
Okay, fine. Fine.
Chipping
But
away at your
I
argument
can't.
here.
It just drives me nuts when holy shit, that spider is huge. What the fuck?
It drives me nuts too.
It just wants
Holy
to be friends.
shit! What are you guys doing? Have you seen this fucking
Maybe-
spider over here?
Maybe that's what they were trying to tell you before, and then you told them to lay down. They said, "Fuck you, Dad."
That spider wants to be loved by you, just you.
No.
Nobody else but you.
I might have to get a bat, dude. This thing is huge. I'm sorry. Anyways,
Do bats eat spiders? Is that why?
I'm like literally amazed by this thing.
You should take a picture of it, and I will post it.
So
That'll be the main image for this episode.
I'm not
Is that
look,
spider.
I'm really not a huge fan of people recording stuff and putting it on an album for sale. And what I'm talking about is like I don't know, what is it, Grey Wolf or some whoever did the cover for
Grey Wolf sounds like a Rutger Hauer film from 1983. What's
Bridge
Grey
Over
Wolf?
Troubled Water or something like that. And then there was
Disturbed did
Sounds of
Sound
Silence.
of Silence.
yeah,
And they did Land of Confusion.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
why?
I
Why?
heard that. I heard that the
Genesis.
other day. I'm like, this isn't Genesis.
Hey, little
Very
buddy.
nice. It's just a little fella.
Oh no,
He's
that
just a
thing
little
is
guy.
4 inches.
I say that a lot, and no one believes me.
5.15 inches.
No. You guys talk amongst yourselves for a minute. 'Cause I got to get rid of this guy.
So I know you're doing film. Are you also planning on doing anything like with TV? Like as an example, one of the other many podcasts that I do is about Letterkenny.
Oh, cool.
And they have some amazing music. That the guy who created the show, Jared Kiso, he finds, and and I think for the most part it's Canadian talent.
Sure.
And has them in there, and some are a little known. I mean, like there's one episode that they had Peaches, "Fuck the Pain Away," but they always have some great music. I mean, from it could be hip hop, it could be rock, it could be EDM, what have you. But they do have some really good music. One of the writers who we've had on the show, Trevor. Oh, why am I forgetting Trevor's last name? Anyway, he's one of the writers for the show. He also used to be a DJ, so he helps find music for Jared to put on the show.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's there's some really cool music on there. So I was just curious if you were ever thinking about maybe getting into TV shows for that kind of stuff as well.
If there's to me, it's definitely relevant if I'm working on a band there is one. There's two examples actually I can pull from right now. One is AC/DC. I found a scene in an early episode of the Cosby Show where Cliff Huxtable berates his two older daughters for playing music too loud, and he picks up a record album, and it's clearly high voltage by AC/DC, but they're not talking about AC/DC when he's referencing what it is they're listening to. So
Okay.
it's just a prop, and so I put that in at the end of my AC/DC episode.
That's just a little guy.
Yeah, wants to be friends. He said, "Hello, come in, have a nice cup of tea. Come inside and meet the missus."
It was literally that big.
See,
It was,
that's why women don't trust us when we say that is 4
no,
inches.
no, not this part, the round part. It was. Look, it bit me.
Yeah, damn. But yeah, there's also I'm going to tie in with the Kiss episode. There's an episode of Chips with my friends told me about with Donnie Most from Happy Days.
Wow.
Dressed like pretty much Gene Simmons with a similar makeup thing, and it's called like Rock Devil Rock is the name of the episode. And I have to find a way to watch it for free. That's job number one. Not pay, $2.99 on Amazon Prime or whatever to see it. So when it comes to that, yes, not so much like a whole TV series, because that's, I don't know, it just like one of those little lost pockets of 70s or 80s or maybe like 90s trivia that it's exciting to talk about and like tell someone, because it usually means that you could tell someone, oh, this actor that got famous 15 years later was a cameo in this TV show, like, some episode of Heart to Heart or who knows, or The Fall Guy or whatever.
Or like Robin Williams falling out of a closet in some unknown TV show.
Yeah. Before he got the cameo on Happy Days or something like that.
Now, are you going to be covering Jesse and the Rippers?
That I know a friend that wants me to sort of, that's going to be tough. I don't know how well, that could be a Beach Boys episode, I guess, because they did show up.
Sure.
And Slaughter showed up on an episode, I think. I remember being a kid and like DJ Tanner being obsessed with Slaughter and they showed up at the house and Mark Slaughter is like asking Danny Tanner, Bob Saget, like, oh, you're into our music? And he's like, I like your early stuff. And DJ's like, Dad, they only have one album. That's my memory anyway.
Yeah, we're another one of my podcasts I have is a debate podcast called Disputed, where we pit fictional characters against each other. And currently I've got the one we're coming up with this next week, or this week on Thursday, is going to be one of Don's favorites. It's going to be James Bond versus Ethan Hunt from Mission Impossible.
Dear.
But I'm planning on a bracketed series of fictional battles of the bands.
Gotcha.
So like Spinal Tap versus Jesse and the Rippers,
sure.
Jim and the Holograms versus, and so I've got
versus Josie and the Pussycats. Like I'm
exactly.
I'm doing a Josie episode for sure.
Nice. There you go. You could even do the Jetsons with a eep op ork and all that.
I think I'm going to do a sort of a sidebar in the Josie episode about like 70s, like Hanna-Barbera or other fictional cartoon bands, for sure. Cause like you got to get the Banana Splits in there somewhere. You got to get, whatever the crappy,
Sid and Marty Krofft stuff. That's some,
oh my goodness.
And that was,
I have to imagine that was a similar sort of tactic to make publishing money for certain songwriters and producers that they used in the 40s and 50s in this sort of Gene Autry era of like Westerns, so all the singing cowboys. Mm-hmm. That was just to get songwriters paid and like producers paid. That was just, they didn't need, like, cowboys didn't need to sing for 15 years in those goddamn movies. But
yeah, and the way they handled music in Nashville was really, I mean, even up till very recently was kind of shitty. I mean, as far as how, if you were a musician and the songwriter, then you had to choose how you got paid. Were you getting paid as the musician, or are you getting paid as the songwriter?
Wow,
there was a lot of weird shit with that back in the day. That I don't think that ended until maybe the 70s, 80s.
Ooh.
So there was some really weird stuff.
I wonder if that had anything to do with the sort of split between BMI and ASCAP, because I know there was a big contingent of people in the country music world that were fed up with one publishing company making all the rules. And I think that's where BMI came from. I think there was a bunch of people that split off and just said legally, like, we're tired of what ASCAP is doing, and we're going to form our own deal. I also, let's see, there was also a thing about Gene Roddenberry tacking on lyrics to the Star Trek theme that didn't exist. So he hired the composer to compose the Star Trek theme. And then because he wanted to get a piece of the publishing royalties when it went into sheet music and things like that, and because of someday, of course, when you go into, what do you call it, reruns and stuff. I don't know if this was a thing at that time that he was thinking about, but syndication,
Right.
you get lots of money from music and syndication on TV shows every time it gets played.
Oh, yeah.
He, without the composer's knowledge, wrote up some bullshit lyrics to the Star Trek theme
to get a chunk.
to get it. Yeah. And so the guy gets his first royalty check. Is like, it was about half as much as he thought it was going to be. And then he looked into it and found out that, like, yeah, that's why.
Wow.
Yeah. But Bryan Cranston talked about, you know, like by the time they got like 3 seasons into Malcolm in the Middle, his agent told him, you should start like whistling during your takes and compose little hum-de-dum-de-doo, da-de-da-de-doo, 3 notes at least tunes, because once this goes into syndication, you're going to get songwriting credits on original compositions because of that little improv. And then he did. He said, I got tons of money from that once Malcolm in the Middle went into syndication.
Wow, that's crazy.
I wonder if that happened. I didn't notice in Breaking Bad if he did that or not. But
Yeah, he probably at that point he didn't need it.
No.
I'm sure.
he's got that Heisenberg money.
Right. There was this is another one of these like little interconnectedness of all things, to quote Douglas Adams, that I keep going back to. I wonder, and if you guys are movie, oh, beautiful. If either of you, I don't know if either of you saw, Local 40. Oh, beautiful. Thank you. If either of you saw Hail Caesar, the Coen Brothers film.
I did, but I don't really remember it too well, aside from the musical scene with what's his name? I think that was the Navy guys.
Yeah.
That's the only one that really sticks out to me.
That young guy, the young heartthrob dude that's been in a ton of movies.
The
is that kind of
Magic Mike
recent?
guy.
Channing Tatum.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, it was probably 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago at the most.
My rule is, if I think it's 5 years ago, it's 12 years ago by now.
That would surprise me. Yeah,
It came out around the same time that Bryan Cranston was starring in a movie called Trumbo, which is about Dalton Trumbo, who is sort of a communist sympathizer who got hunted down, and in the whole, Red Scare thing in the McCarthy era, and he wrote Spartacus uncredited and wouldn't accept an award for it because he didn't want to get basically outed. Among other things he had done in Hollywood that made him a lot of money and made him pretty famous. Well, it's such a sympathetic to his sort of socialist cause, but it came out about the same time that the Coen brothers put out Hail Caesar, which is a little cheeky expose of Hollywood at the time, where the main character gets sort of semi-kidnapped by a bunch of communists in their little retreat, and they kind of indoctrinate him with their sort of mentality and try to push him back out into the Hollywood system to, drum up more support for for not just but for the unions and stuff, which is admirable. But at the end, they're sort of the main character is like a fixer for the studio, and he tells people who they're going to marry and who they're going to live with, and blah blah blah. And at the end of it, he just like brings the main character back. He's like, yeah, whatever. Listen to me, you're going to get in there. You're going to make this stupid fucking movie. It's going to make a lot of money. You're going to forget all about this communist bullshit, and you're going to stay on the payroll. And that was sort of the overarching sort of like, yeah, it's nice to think about this stuff, but in reality, these people got to put bread on the table and blah, 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 blah. And this is the guy that's a strong arm dude that makes sure these ideological things don't corrupt the money-making machine. And it was funny to me. Like, I just had to wonder, did the Coen brothers see that Dalton Trumbo's story was being told with someone like Bryan Cranston, it's kind of like Oscar bait stuff, and just decide to sort of take the piss out of it by putting this really fun movie out at about the same time that does its version of behind the scenes Hollywood stuff from another point of view. I loved them both, because Dalton Trumbo's a hero of mine because I read, like every fucking metal nerd, I read Johnny Got His Gun because of Metallica. And Metallica, on the same album as One, put out The Shortest Straw, which is about a witch hunt and the blacklisting in Hollywood and the Red Scare. So I have to imagine James Hetfield like went from one thought to the next. And these are the jags my mind goes on that like I can't talk to enough people about, so I have a podcast to take care of all this shit.
I dig it. Yeah, I mean, because I didn't know that about those songs in particular from Metallica. I do know that they have historically written songs that are about things, actual events and things like that, or whether
before
it's their
James
own
Hetfield
personal...
learned to process his emotions in the 90s. Yes, they did.
Right.
Yeah.
force
But they
of
were always
anger.
better. They were always better at it than a lot of other thrash bands or metal bands, especially power metal bands that just like would write as if they were Conan or write as if they were some interstellar warrior or whatever.
Yeah, I think the only band who, in my opinion, who did it really well was Iron Maiden.
Sure.
Right, with all the war stuff that they've
Oh
done.
God,
yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
And I mean, it was just epic.
Yeah.
I mean, the stuff that they would write, whether it was "Rime of the Ancient Mariner,"
Yeah.
I mean, that whole thing. I mean, I don't know how long that song was. It was like 7, 8
11
minutes.
minutes.
Oh, it's 11.
It's 11 minutes because I would go in to play darts at establishments that did not play rock as a genre, and I would find the jukebox and I would play the first half of 2112, which was 1 credit.
Sure.
And then I would play Rime of the Ancient Mariner.
Beautiful.
And take over the song or the music in the place for an hour and 6 minutes.
Right.
So,
For $1.
for $2, yes, exactly. And I would always leave and especially more in the later years when they had the you could do it on your phone, so you didn't have to actually go over and put your money in.
No one knows it's you. Yeah.
Right. So
did you play? Did you also play La Via Strangiato?
No. But what was the other one? There was a third one that I would just do it just to piss everybody off.
Ecstasy of Gold by Ennio Morricone or something like that.
Oh God, I wish. But upon leaving, when I knew I wouldn't be back to that establishment for a while, I would put on a Rick Astley song like 3 or 4 times.
I think one of my favorite songs, one of my favorite bits about playing songs on a jukebox was from John Mulaney talking about how he went to this diner and he kept playing. He had like $2 of quarters or something like that, and they put in it's not, I don't know if it was not unusual or no, what's New Pussycat. That's what they were doing.
Yeah.
And then throw about 10 songs in. Throw in it's not unusual, and then another 10 songs of What's New Pussycat.
I heard an analogous story by a comedian named Larry Miller, who was one of those guys.
I remember him.
He came up with Jerry Seinfeld and a lot of those New York guys at the time. Very, very much that sort of like well-dressed, clean-cut kind of comedy that was, kind of, not too vulgar or anything. But yeah, he talked about a night where it's like him, Jerry, and like 2 other their friends. They go out after a long night, but there's like this restaurant. It's going to be open late, and it was that like some of them arrived before the others, and they were at 2 different tables, and they started like making a whole joke of like sending each other dishes of stuff they didn't want to eat, and they would start with borscht. They would send they would send borscht, and then they would send
soup.
some steamed cabbage, and then they would like because they made a deal that they had to eat whatever the other person ordered, so they were just torching it. So then they like it was like 3 different dishes, and then they finished it out with borscht again at the very end, and then that's when they gave up. So the whole thing was like a game of chicken. Whoever gives up and refuses to eat what's in front of them has to pay for everybody's meal. Was the deal?
Yeah, I'd order some like balut and which is fertilized chicken egg.
Right.
Oh,
right.
Yeah.
I guess that was some sort of a fish thing.
I think it's a Filipino dish. Is from what I can recall.
It's a delicacy, and I mean, when you crack it open, you can see chicken. It's not.
Yeah.
It's
like a jellied little bird thing.
Yeah. It's let's see here. Let's see if I can.
That scene from the TV miniseries of It when they're at the Chinese restaurant and that little there's a little half-hatched duckling or chicken,
exactly
with a big eyeball on the left side.
Let me see if I can share this here.
No, please
so you
don't.
can.
Oh, so it's fine. It's when Dawn's gets spider time.
There we go.
Yeah. No.
Oh,
That's
Nice.
absolutely disgusting. Oh my
wow.
So it's duck. It's not chicken. It's duck. That's what it is.
Yeah.
goodness. Oh,
you
is
gotta
it duck? I thought
catch
it
it
was
at just the right time. Oof.
So there you go. Enjoy your balut, everybody.
Yeah.
sure
Yeah.
that
Don't
smells
tell me.
wonderful.
Don't give me that life begins at conception nonsense if you can't.
If you can't eat a balut,
Yeah.
that's just not.
But back to your. I was gonna say, Dean,
If I order balut for the table, will everybody have some?
I think you would win the bet. I think you'd win that game. I was gonna say, Dean. Yeah. I mean, when you were asking earlier about like, am I gonna interview certain people?
Yeah,
I have I don't know who I would interview, but if I could build towards anything, if I gain enough steam, I would want to do something similar to what Matt Gorley did with a series a few years ago called I Was There Too. And if you're a movie buff, I highly recommend you check it out. It might have been moved behind a paywall at Airwolf now, and I don't know. But I listened to it when it was new for a few years. And his whole thing was, granted, he lives in LA and does, he was in with that G4 Nerdist crowd and, did he's done TV, and he was in that Drunk History crowd. He's like the first episode of Drunk History, things like that. And I think he graduated from USC for filmmaking and things, and did a lot of improv comedy. But his whole thing was like, what if I could just get like the people that were the passengers on the bus from the movie Speed, and get the lady that's pushing the baby carriage in The Untouchables, and get, the people that played the bit parts for one spectacular scene in a famous movie, but weren't like credited necessarily, like and get their stories. Like there's a Poltergeist episode that's amazing,
Yeah, the mom who slapped the mayor in Jaws. And,
right. Yeah. Exactly that kind of thing. And it's fascinating because they have stories that no one else has. Yeah. They have no reason not to tell them because they're not stars, so they're not going to lose work 15 to 30 years later.
I think I did hear about her that every now and again she gets people come up to her on the street and ask her to slap them.
Friend, film it for Instagram Live. Absolutely.
Totally.
That's making it,
on my
man.
TikTok.
Yeah. But
Well,
that's what I would do. If I could, I would love to could I interview the guitar tech for, Steve Vai when he was working on Crossroads? Could I I want to find out, speaking of like having come from just watching.
Cooter was also did music in that.
And Arlen Roth, I found out. There's 3 powerhouse guys that were working on the guitar lesson aspect for Ralph Macchio and the recording of the soundtrack and the performing aspect. But yeah, having just watched part of Light of Day, I want to know who was the manager or the agent for the Fabulous Thunderbirds in the mid 80s. Because when I was little, they were like little. No, I've always been little. But when I was young, I saw the movie Tough Enough or Tough Guys, which had the song Tough Enough in the movie. And it was Burt Lancaster and somebody else plays 2 guys, like train robbers that get out of prison and they go for like one last boost. But like they were Fabulous Thunderbirds were like all over the promo for it and heavily featured in the soundtrack of the movie. Jimmy Vaughn, Stevie Ray Vaughan's older brother, who's the guitarist, he was in he portrays the guitarist, even though I don't know that there really was a regular guitarist in Jerry Lee Lewis's band in Great Balls of Fire with Dennis Quaid, with Mojo Nixon on drums and with John Doe from X on bass.
I remember that. I remember Mojo Nixon.
And then I was just watching Light of Day, the Paul Schrader movie with Joan Jett and Michael McKean and Michael J. Fox. They just inexplicably have to have a scene where they go see the Fabulous Thunderbirds at some arena in Cleveland. And it doesn't do anything for the plot. They're just there at a concert and they show the Fabulous Thunderbirds playing like half a song. And I'm just going, who was getting them all these like Hollywood tie-ins? And, it's just like, no matter, it's like when the WWE tries to push somebody that no one really cares about and make them the WWE champion and the crowd's not going for it.
Right.
Like Hollywood was like, damn it, the time has come for Fabulous Thunderbirds to take over rock and roll. It's like, it's too little too late, buddy. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We're not.
I mean, I did enjoy them, but yeah, because I remember them at the time because I'm originally from Texas, so Stevie Ray Vaughan was huge.
Sure.
And yeah, I think they were trying to make the Fabulous Thunderbirds a thing because of Stevie Ray.
Sure.
And not that they were bad, it just was.
Well, they were more commercial sounding. I mean, they were more like geared towards having hits, And it's funny though to me because it's like that is one of the most bummer eras of rock and roll mainstream music to me is that mid 80s Hollywood. I keep running into these 80s rock and roll movies that are contemporary for the time that are pushing this overly produced like Fender Stratocaster based guitar music with not bluesy enough bluesy hard rock vocals and like not quite even like George Thorogood level like commitment to the blues.
Right.
And which is pretty whitewashed. I'm not talking smack about him, but I don't think I'm, being insulting. Nope. And it's just so bland. And they're really thinking it's like you hear it in like the album that John Cafferty did after Eddie and the Cruisers. That sort of like middle of the road rock. It's not quite Bruce Springsteen either. It's just so bland and so overproduced, and it's not taking a stand on anything or being original in any way. Like new wave's already come, punk has already come, metal, glam metal's on the rise, and that somebody, especially in Hollywood, just keeps pushing this like boring white guy dad rock that has no point of view whatsoever. You know?
Oh yeah. Yeah, that happens far too often.
The Wonder Bread of rock and roll.
Yeah. Yeah, like it makes Bruce Hornsby in the Range sound like Devo by comparison. Right. And that's not shade at Bruce Hornsby either, because god damn it, that guy could write a fucking song and say his balls off.
Yeah, speaking of Bruce Hornsby, it all reminds me of like Bruce Hornsby and Steve Winwood seem to be really big both at the same time.
Yeah,
from what I can recall. And so, there's a lot of
that
Steve Winwood
rock,
in my
that lean into soft rock kind of stuff. It's that same era that Dan Tyson and I from LSD, like we go bonkers for that, like late 80s solo Clapton, solo Phil Collins. Yes is trying to get commercial, and not that those are the songs that were the soundtrack to our lives, but just we love watching the videos now just seeing like how, I mean, over budget kind of stuff, like genetically engineered to be hits, and like no one really remembers it anymore. You know?
Oh my God! Changing places, put yourself in the air, something like that.
Yes, was that the Yes tune? Yeah, he had to tell me. He had to tell me like how many members of Yes that were in that video were like no longer in the band, but they had
like all of them. Like there's only nobody left in the band that was an original member ever.
Yeah, like none of them played on the record, but they put them all in the video for some reason. And
really strange. Yeah, what was the name of that album? 90210?
No.
Yeah,
no. I can't remember. I mean, it was a catchy album, and it was a toe tapper.
Sure.
You know, but I mean, it was no Gates of Delirium, which was like one of the original, whole album, one song, songs, it took up the entire album.
Right.
So, yeah, I don't know.
Those days. Yeah.
That's what I know about that and nothing.
I love the Venture Brothers episode where Dr. Venture just puts the headphones on his kid on Dean, and he's like, it's time for you to learn about progressive rock, and he puts on Yes, and he like does this whole like psychedelic mind trip thing, and then Dean Venture's like going through the albums, and he's in, because it's like what got young Rusty Venture into scientific exploration or whatever. And then he's like, what about this kind of scary red one? And he holds it up, and Dr. Venture's like, oh, you're not ready to enter the court of the Crimson King, my good boy. That just might make you an evil scientist.
90125 and 18 band members.
There we go. I'm glad I bought you enough time to go find that out.
I just had to know. I couldn't remember.
Yep. But I also love the fact that like that guy, the dude that created that, like it was Doc Samson or whoever created that, he has jokes about Yes, and he has jokes about Yaz and Yaz, like the guy that used to be. He knows, like, that's a kindred spirit. Like that's, if you can talk smack about progressive rock and bands started by the guy from Erasure before he was in Erasure, but after he was in Depeche Mode, I always say that like Megadeth is the Erasure of thrash metal.
Wow.
Vincent Clarke was in Depeche Mode. He was more synth pop than the other guys in Depeche Mode and had to go his own way. Dave Mustaine was in Metallica. He was more evil and thrashy and technically proficient and had to go his own way and be more extreme. And they both did. And neither one of them got to the commercial heights of the band that they left, but both were pioneering bands in their own way.
Oh yeah. And I think there's probably a lot more, as far as musicians are concerned, seen as more respect for, even though they were more commercially.
Bands. Yeah. They took more chances, It's just, it's that, it makes more of a state. It leaves more of a stain sometimes. I don't know. I've also kind of, I think I got to a point a long time ago where I never, ever felt like it was worth arguing about like whether a band sells out, an artist sells out at any given time. Like it just, especially with what happened to the music industry in the early 2000s when all the all the big entertainment companies came together after everything was deregulated. You know, AOL, Time Warner owns every song ever written that Disney doesn't own. And it's just like, if any musician ever got paid for doing anything, I don't care if it's a car commercial or if it's, you know, cheese flavored cheese, you know, whatever. If a musician got paid good, I don't care anymore about who sold out to what.
Fine. I'll
Fine.
not be pissed off about people Tom Cruising other people's songs.
Yeah, it was funny. You know, speaking of Tom Cruise, and sorry to get off topic a little bit, because I've got the Mission Impossible stuff coming up with Ethan Hunt.
Yeah.
It's you know, I like you am not a big fan of Tom Cruise, but from everything I understand, I just read an interview with the guy that was in Stumptown and New Girl, Jack Johnson or Johansson or something like that. I can't remember his name. I've always enjoyed the stuff that he's done. And he did an interview talking about Tom Cruise and about how intense he is. And it says, he goes, yeah, I got on there and I was afraid. Because he's super intense, but, it's because he was really trying to make a good product. And that's, you know, his goal, even though you may not like it, his goal has been just being entertaining.
But he's not a good actor. He's not. Well, you can take him, like I've said this 1,000 times, you can take him out of every movie he's ever been in and insert another actor that's mediocre or, you know, better, and it would improve the movie tenfold.
I think it would. I think if I can support that and still not compliment Tom Cruise, I think that's why he's been so successful in the era of Hollywood, where it's so important to be able to translate things into Asian languages and promote them in other countries, because he is such a blank slate as a non-human being. Like
very
he is not. He couldn't for the life of him ever be Harry Dean Stanton or Humphrey Bogart. Or someone that leaves an impression on you as a personality that like you can't wipe away. But because he's so just like slap another language on him and make him say anything that you want and you can believe it because he gives up no real indications of his humanity. I think he's also just, I respect that he's got the energy and he's trying to be the most driven human being in the universe, but I don't think that lends itself well to being necessarily a good person. I remember hearing back in the day when this guy was very entertaining still and not someone I couldn't stand, but the first few years of Adam Carolla's podcast, you know, he was still, in my eyes, he was still funny, but I never really got into the Man Show. I just heard him on the radio in the mornings and I liked his take on music and I liked his take on, you know, various things he got fired up about because he had a lot of other good comedians on his podcast back in those days. Right. He got me into Larry Miller. He got me into Dana Gould. He got me into Patton Oswalt. He got me into Norm Macdonald and a lot of comedians that I then left him behind for. But anyway, the point was he talked about being at a Jimmy Kimmel Super Bowl party and Tom Cruise was there. And he's like, he's the most intensely wholesome, healthy person in the universe. Like he doesn't drink water. He just chugs multiple bottles of water and then like stretches while he's talking and will like limber up constantly and always be in motion and always be talking and doing things and communicating things and making things happen. That's what he does.
He does seem hyperkinetic.
Yeah.
I think it's trying to keep his lizard skin from showing in the human skin that he is wearing, because I swear to God that guy is Xenu.
I think he vibrates at a higher level than most of us. Yes. That's not always good. Like
I think he ingests his cocaine through his anus.
Well, his cocaine's probably amazing. So if that's what it takes,
100%.
I'll try cocaine for the first time if it's Tom Cruise's cocaine and it's going in my butt. For sure. Or I'm not sure.
Just watch out for the Tom Cruise applicator.
Yeah. I mean,
why are both your hands on my shoulders?
If it's been inside of Katie Holmes and Nicole Kidman and whoever the first wife was, does that mean I'm actually gay if I go for it? I don't think it does. I don't think it does.
But only if you want it to be.
It's kind of like if Nicole Kidman has sex with my butt, I don't think that makes me gay.
No.
But maybe if Tom Cruise does, it depends. I don't know.
I don't think there's anything wrong with
it depends on her.
gay.
If her thetans are still coating his penis, then it's like a condom. It's like, I don't know.
Here,
I'll have to talk to a doctor about this.
Hold these cans with your
Yeah.
rectum. Rectum. It nearly killed him.
I've actually I read the book Going Clear about Scientology, and then I watched the documentary at least 3 times. I can't, like, that's a story that it just has so many layers to it. It's amazing, and I know it's old news now, but I mean,
I watched the first couple of seasons of Leah Remini's show, and it just infuriated me more and more about how people ruin faith.
Yeah.
And
Sure.
I have
And other
absolutely
people.
I have
And children.
I have absolutely no problem with faith. Believe what you want. What I have a problem with is the people that are, well, aren't you religious? Don't you believe in our Savior, Jesus Christ? Whoa. Hold on. I believe in Dean. I believe in Jay. I believe in Dan Tyson. I believe in my dogs.
That's a pretty good foundation.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I believe in the people that I surround myself with.
Yeah.
And you know, my argument with one of my aunts was always, you know, she's like, well, you have to believe in God. And I'm like, no, I don't. I have to believe in the people I surround myself with, because if, in fact, God is everywhere, then I am believing in God by believing in the people I surround myself with, because they're good people.
Sure.
Or I'm shitty at picking out people, which is possible.
Yeah. And it also, you know, I don't mind anyone talking about things they believe in. I just have to, they have to deal with the social contract of, if you're going to speak a language that is not universal, and this happens to a lot of enthusiastic believers of various faiths,
Right.
You got to deal with the fact that we can't meet you halfway. I can't go to a Super Bowl party and ramble to everyone there about the various stages of, let's say, Harry Dean Stanton's acting career and expect people to run with it. You know what I mean? Like, it's the same damn thing. Once you start using the coded language of your tribe, and then you're outside the tribe, it's, you got to do the legwork to, like, bring someone, like, what does that mean? Well, this, you know, it's like whatever they did to get, like, Isaac Hayes into the Church of Scientology and Sun Ra, or whatever progressive, like, jazz and you know, musicians they got back in the 70s into their clutches, you know, like, whatever they did, because those people were looking for an alternative to Western religions, and not quite all the way into an Eastern religion. They found this science fiction-y thing that was, you know, that was just seemed hipper. And then it's just fascinating to me that they built generations of wealth on it, the same way the Catholic Church would, you know, like,
Totally.
we have a rule now where you priests can't get married, so you can't pass down your wealth, so it goes to us instead.
Yeah.
You know, they just found a workaround for Scientology too. It's just like, oh, well, no, you know, you're going to give your money to us, and we're going to put it back into helping other people. And, you know,
and you'll get a promotion every so often.
it's that
We'll
dangling that
tell
carrot.
you another story about Xenu and how he put a cap over the earth to keep the souls in.
And all the things that they tell anyone in a cult or anyone in a violent gang, anything that requires initiations, anything that requires you cut off from the rest of your family and your support group. So when you freak out, the only support you have is the people that indoctrinated you.
You mean like politics too? Like you can only be in one side or the other. You can't mix a blue and a purple and be in the middle somewhere. You can't be purple, a blue and a red. And
of course not. No, because you can't. Yeah. What side are you on when you believe that maybe there should be less regulations on businesses and less taxes for something here, but also you believe in science and that vaccines work, and that you know, maybe you don't believe that as many black people should end up in prison as currently are, but you but you don't like the Democrats' endless war when it comes to, like, Obama and Hillary furthering the Bush doctrine for quite a while. And you know, you can't have those kind of nuanced conversations, which is why I don't adhere to any one side or the other, because they're always changing, because none of it means anything. None of them believe.
I will defend my marginalized friends' rights with my Second Amendment.
There you go. Yeah.
Same.
And the threat to those rights is usually just like every few years or so when they want to scare up, you know, Second Amendment support
I mean,
or
it's
threaten the Second Amendment, depending on which side you're talking about.
so
You know,
I think we all know the Second Amendment's not going anywhere.
yeah,
I mean, abortion is not going anywhere. It may have
not on a
effects
federal
and,
level,
and
probably.
yeah, exactly, not on a federal level.
And now
because
the Church of the Satanic Temple is
Yeah.
is fighting for their right to a what is it, the ritual of having an
Sure.
abortion.
yeah,
Oh, nice. Good.
it is their God given, their satanic given right.
Right.
Yeah.
Because they are a recognized religion.
You have
Yep.
to, because that means it forces everyone's hand. You have to admit that this is all subjective and mostly, whatever you feel like at the time and open to interpretation.
Yeah. Yes.
That you're just
Yeah.
changing, you're just moving the goalpost to suit whatever your feelings are. I mean, when I was 13, I felt that abortion was wrong. I'd never had naked relations with a nice lady before. As soon as I had, which isn't to say that as a kid I was like, well, we should take it away. I just felt like it made me feel gross. As soon as I had one scare with a girl that said she might have been pregnant, and we had to go get a test, and it was still negative. That was enough. Like, everyone should be able to have abortions all the time, whenever they want them, because we don't need to be having kids. And
I have I borrowed $300. It's in my pocket.
Yeah.
I'm in case we need to do this. I'm ready.
Yeah, my opinion is if you don't like abortions, don't have one.
sure,
Right. Yep.
yeah,
And don't follow your religion that tells you you can't have one, because your religion is probably hoping that possible birth will be another customer for them.
Oh yeah, and well, and also if you look at your Jesus fan fiction, you'll see that his dad killed a lot of infants as well as the unborn. So it's not off the table.
for sure.
Oh,
And it's also
you
the
mean the red above the painted yeah.
another
that-
Metallica
that
song,
too.
as a
yeah,
matter
exactly.
of fact.
Right,
Yes.
exactly.
All goes back to that.
One of their best
Yeah.
songs, in fact.
They're it also does what it, mostly all these things that we just mentioned, the different rights being under attack, or the lines between what's real or what's fictionalized religion, what you have a right to infringe upon other Americans. It's all an attempt to get people bogged down in the details, when if they could just have a refresher on debate, more often, and critical thinking, you just go, oh, wait a minute, I got sucked into talking about the details of a thing that has no bearing on the real justifiable premise that we're discussing. You start going into all these little tiny arguments about, whoa, wait a minute, no. The point of this all is you don't have the right to infringe your religion on other people, and that's what keeps your religion safe. And that's the line that people keep trying to move. It's like, if you want to keep the religion, you can't force it into the school, but they changed, obviously people changed the language to make it seem like, they say, they took God out of school. So like, shouldn't have been there in the first place. It wasn't allowed. You stuck it in there for a long time. And
Exactly.
that's not where it goes.
like sneaking words onto coins and into songs that didn't belong in
Pledges.
the first place.
Yeah.
Pledges, right.
Yeah.
Right.
Weren't there before. So, and it's that
Changing Jesus into white Jesus,
And the Kenny Loggins.
Wait,
Right.
Kenny Loggins or the love child of Kenny Loggins and Chuck Norris.
Yeah, sure.
which is the Jesus we all need, really.
Right.
I mean,
He doesn't do push-ups. He pushes the earth down.
But just let
yeah.
me say this: fuck Chuck Norris.
Yeah, exactly. And his exercise tool that looks like some type of
Oh God.
you're being crucified on it or something. Can't even remember the name of the thing, the
Dude,
crucifier.
I hate famous people that were cool for a long time, and now they're on their way out and they're on TV ranting about religious shit or political shit. Like, oh man, like I got to deal with you now too.
Oh yeah. Well, it was like I'm we're all of the same age. I mean, I grew up listening to Ted Nugent as well, and enjoyed it. And then then he became a fucking complete nut job.
Well, he was a nut. He was a
acted
nut
like
job
a
for
nut,
a
but-
very long time. He
and I-
adopted his wife before she was his wife so that he could marry her.
So he had to have custody of her. Yeah.
Yes.
Steven Tyler did the same thing with a 13-year-old girl, which also I believe
I
Ted
did
Nugent
not
did with a
know that.
13-year-old girl.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Steven Tyler was like, they were open about that in the Aerosmith autobiography that came out in '99, which is one of the best rock and roll books ever. But yeah, I will say this: I read the best Ted Nugent focused quote that I've ever read in my life when I finally bought this recent Faith No More biography, and it was not Roddy Bottom. He's a keyboard player. Billy Gould, bass player for Faith No More, said, "The day I heard Motorhead for the first time was the day I realized I'd never have to listen to Ted Nugent again." Because a lot of those guys, they were listening to Kiss, Ted Nugent, and Aerosmith, and that was the heaviest metal they'd ever heard, right? In America.
Don't forget Billy Squier. Throw Billy Squier in there. Come on now.
Before Billy Squires.
I got to meet Lemmy once. He was, he had a side project. He had a rockabilly band called
Headcat,
the Headcat, and they were playing here at El Corazon.
Yes.
And they were backlining all of their gear. So whoever was the band before them, so whatever rockabilly band that was before them took off, and the bass player took his bass. So my buddy Jack, I don't know if you know Hard Money Saints or yeah. So Jack, who I played with in a few bands, called me up. He goes,
Jack Rainwater.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And so he calls me up. He goes, "Hey, can Lemmy borrow your bass?" I was like, "Sure." Which so I came down. I got to meet him, shook his hand. He was a tiny little guy, but he was hanging out with a couple of girls backstage and smoking joints and just getting ready to go. And yeah, it was funny because I got to watch the show as well, and it was funny because Lemmy's playing his Rickenbacker, and then he's also got an upright player at the same time. So it was really kind of odd.
Interesting. That's cool. Well, if any of the listeners or viewers are interested, I have an entire Lemmy episode of the history of rock and roll and film and rock and roll. But it was a totally just, it says an Airheads addendum. Lemmy is God.
Lemmy is God. Yeah.
Lemmy is God. Nice.
Yeah. I remember one of the guys I played with, James Honeycutt, he always wore the Lemmy holding a lamb as Jesus.
Yeah.
So he wore that all the time.
Yep.
It's not far off. It's not.
Yeah. You have somebody mucking around behind you.
It's dog fooding time. So my wife came in to grab the one dog that stays in here with me because she does not like
her head in.
I think she's gone. She's probably feeding them right now. She may, if we're still going when she comes back, then she might. Yeah. So,
because things happen.
Yeah, because Idris will just come running right back here and then probably jump up on my lap unless Tiara comes back to put her in her crate.
Let's see what kind of trouble my dogs are in.
Well, see, that's probably Shadow and Onyx out in the TV room right now. They just before
they're
they
not
got
fighting right now.
Right at the moment, yeah. Fortunately, that hasn't happened again. So hopefully, I can keep it that way.
No, it's okay with me. Relax.
Do I need to bark at something, Dad?
She's growling. She's all pissy now.
God damn it! Somebody woke me up with get off my lawn.
Who is it? Who is it?
I don't want to get up. I don't want to.
She's grumbly. And Bean's like, "What the fuck?"
She's sniffing at the crack at the bottom of the door. Where is it? Where is it? Get it. Go get it. Bean's like, whatever, dude.
Yeah. I'm just laying here. I'm gonna take your
I'm
warm
the
spot.
second line of defense.
No, Bean will hide behind me if somebody comes in.
That's like Shadow does.
He'll run over to where the treats are and be like, "They're here."
Yeah,
I'm
guarding the treats. No one will steal them. So what's next for the history of rock and roll and movies?
What's next for the Jay Smith?
Well, aside from that, I mean, are you planning on any other podcasts or?
No, I'd love to do. I would love just more attention for this one.
Sure.
Yeah, but also I'm doing music too, so I'm trying to figure that all out. As how we do this in this era, and depending on which band I'm talking about, and I've got enough lists of movies to get into to keep cranking out history of rock and roll episodes. My worry is that I will get too far without properly representing certain artists or let's say ethnicities, to be blunt. in the history of rock and roll, because the stories behind the making of some of these films are so exciting,
Hmm.
or the availability of the film could change at any minute, depending on if it's free
True.
streaming or if there's a pirated YouTube version, or the library system has a copy I can watch or I can stream. But I also, because I did one Chuck Berry episode based on the show, the movie Cadillac Records, Mos Def playing Chuck Berry.
Oh, nice.
And I have Chuck Berry's autobiography. I've got like 2 more episodes worth of stuff to talk about, just about him, having also bought the Hail Hail Rock and Roll, which is a documentary concert film, came out in the 80s, and the movie, Rock, Rock, Rock with him in it. But I also kind of got nervous about not being able to do him justice because he's so goddamn important to us guitar players that I put a lot of it off, because I got into like the history of his playing, his approach to guitar, and I got to get this right. And I jumped into some other stuff that was a little easier at the time. But then again, like I said, I haven't finished the singles episodes yet because they're depressing. I haven't finished I haven't done the Crow yet, even though I've written a bunch of stuff for that. So there's a lot of those now will be peppered with a little easier one-offs like the Valley Girl, like the Blackboard Jungle. I've got the Elvis episode I talked about. That'll be kind of easy. Little Richard's a big one. I bought his autobiography and I started watching a biopic about him that I didn't know existed. It was a made-for-TV ABC film about him that came out in the early 2000s. And I watched half of it, taking notes. It seems really cool. I like what they're doing with it. It gets right to the heart of his sort of his sexual identity at the very beginning. They're not pulling any punches, which is cool because what is this, like prime time on ABC? This is kind of daring. To show him as a child, like putting on makeup and dressing up in his mom's clothes and jewelry and stuff, kind of finding out what it's going to be like to be a gay man as he gets older, and how is he going to manage to, not sort of get in trouble for that.
Yeah.
And his book is, I've just opened to like a bunch of random spots, and he's describing being backstage at a show, and a woman that Buddy Holly had the hots for on this tour was sucking my titty, Little Richard's, and while Buddy has like 5 minutes before he goes on stage and comes in the dressing room and starts going at it from behind with the girl while she's got her face, attending to Little Richard's body parts. And I'm like, this is the price of the book. I mean, paid for 1 million times over with one page. I'm so excited to like read more of like Little Richard not giving a fuck, and this is like a 1986 published book. I didn't know.
That's kind of like that Eartha Kitt story about James Dean and Marlon Brando. Basically having a threesome with James Dean and Marlon Brando, and them being bisexual. So it was that was a very interesting story.
It's so funny to hear.
What's the line? Hollywood report, or a reporter asked James Dean why he was living with a gay man in West Hollywood, and he said, "You don't expect me to go through life with one hand tied behind my back, do you?"
Nice. Love it.
Okay.
That's great.
Fair enough.
There you go. Yeah, it's sad that more people couldn't have been out like that earlier.
Yeah.
I think,
or even still now.
oh
Sure.
Yeah.
It's
depending on where you are,
unfortunate.
but yeah.
It's so funny to think about history as being, you get older and you realize that history and the acceptance of certain kind of elements of our humanity and our culture is not like a straight line. Like it hasn't just gotten more tolerant as time goes on. It's got like peaks and valleys of tolerance and acceptance of different religions and sexuality and whatever.
It's gotten further and further apart with its extremisms.
To find and to find out that like before the Hays Code was imposed on Hollywood, there was like depictions of bisexuality or someone getting an abortion in films in like the 30s or whatever. Also, that's why all the monster movies started to suck after the first one, like the original Frankenstein and Dracula and Wolfman, and they were all the good ones. And then the Hays Code was imposed for decency and moral character or whatever. And all those like Son of Frankenstein and House of Frankenstein and whatever, like they got shittier and shittier because they couldn't show a lot of scary shit. They couldn't show a lot of sexy stuff, and that's why no one cares about the.
That's why they threw Abbott and Costello in there with them.
Right. So. That somehow that's one of the better ones.
Come here. Okay,
but yes.
lay down.
So back to your it's gonna be more episodes of this while I can do it, and in the best way. I've now got enough built up sort of source material and notes that I'm not as stressed out about what my next thing is. I finally reached, I think with the AC/DC episodes, I reached a nice little a point of like, okay, I've got a bunch of stuff in the bank as far as what's written but not recorded, and I know what movies I'm doing next. So it's gonna be, it's gonna be, like I said, Graham Parsons. It's gonna be the Misfits. It's gonna be Eddie and the Cruisers. It's gonna be the Runaways, and then I got to work in a movie I watched for the first time a year ago. It's called Satisfaction, and you can't find a copy of this anywhere, but it was like 88, 89. It's a movie about an all-female rock band on the East Coast. For the summer, they go to like a beach resort town and they play the same club all summer long. And it stars Liam Neeson as their manager. It has Justine Bateman on guitar, a Telecaster, and vocals.
This sounds so familiar.
Julia Roberts on bass, lefty bass. And even then, Julia Roberts looks like a mom. She's so not sexy. And then the drummer, I don't think she went on to do a lot acting wise, but the other female, the other female singer and guitarist is the young lady that went on to be the voice of Jem from Jem and the Holograms. Yep, that's it right there.
Yeah, 1988.
Yeah. Yep.
Crazy.
And I just I've got audio from me watching that with friends, like getting progressively drunker and like recording my outbursts while I'm watching the movie. Because it's just it's so funny to watch this to think back on like the chauvinist 80s mentality. I still don't totally buy it for the late 80s, but I know a lot of women went through a lot of chauvinism, sexism, misogyny trying to be in rock bands. But it's so ridiculous to me that like see these actresses, like famous, like obviously they are attractive women that are singing rock and roll songs, and all these dumb men are like, you can't play rock and roll, get them off the stage. Like, why? Who says that at a rock show when there's all women on stage? Nobody. Everyone knows that draws more money, that draws more people, that guys spend more money on drinks because more girls will show up. It makes no fucking sense, which is not to say it didn't happen, but I just hate that was like a thing.
There was such a trope
for
for so long.
Yeah.
And still is in a lot of places.
Right. Well, it's like listening to Joan Jett talk about the fact, she's like, men threw beer bottles at me on stage because I was a girl, in the 70s or whatever, the early 80s. I'm like, okay, I can't prove she's not correct. But the fact of the matter is, in the 70s, like beer bottles got thrown at the Ramones too. Like beer bottles, batteries, and cherry bombs got thrown at whoever was on stage, even if they liked you.
Oh yeah.
There
like,
was chicken wire between audiences and the stage at many venues.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like if even now I'm trying to remember the name of the show. I'll have to come back to it. But
movie or TV show or
it was
concert.
It was actually I remember it was a documentary on the Go-Go's.
Oh yeah. Was it a new one?
I don't know how old it was. I mean, I
There's
watched
one
it
like just came out last month that I haven't seen. It's like
I watched it during middle of the height of the pandemic, so it's older. But yeah, it was pretty good. And watching some of their shows because they were originally considered a punk band. And they had videos from the shows, and I didn't see anybody that wasn't rocking out to what the fuck they were doing. So.
Sure. There's a good episode from last year of the Dana Gould Hour podcast. He's a comedian and former writer for The Simpsons, and among many other things. And he interviews, I forget which band member it is. It's not the one you think, not the one that was in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure and played bass. But she talks about, I think it's the Music for Weirdos episode is what it's called. And she talks about they were at one of the first Rock in Rios, and like they're down there, like Belinda Carlisle is like doing blow with like Rod Stewart and Ozzy Osbourne on the same night. Like everyone's just trying to get wasted as possible. And like Rod Stewart's trying to hit on the Go-Go's, like trying to find one of them to go back to his dressing room with him. And to like these girls, he's like, dad, like, forget it, you weirdo.
Yeah.
But like, it's just like, they just went down there. They just went to party, man. They tore it up as hard as they could. And
the girl who played, was it the bass player from the Go-Go's that played Joan of Arc in the Bill and Ted? Yeah,
I believe so. Yeah, yep.
Yeah.
And there was at least one other acting role she had that I found out about recently. Yes. I'm gonna pretend like I'm paying attention now.
Yeah, so now I don't know if I ever saw this Satisfaction, though the look of the poster looks familiar.
Right? It looks like something we've all seen
Yeah,
and then forgot about because Ethan
it-
Hunt or something. I don't know.
I mean, it doesn't have a very high score on IMDb. It's 4.9 out of 10. But I mean, I'd give it a shot. I mean, I like Liam Neeson. I like Justine Bateman, and is Britta Phillips one of the? Is she from Will?
He's the one from Gem. Yeah.
Okay. So, and you got Debbie Harry in it.
Right.
Yes, she shows up. She's a little fuck buddy of Liam Neeson in that movie. Yeah.
Yeah, Debbie Harry she's icon. Come on.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. So she was in. Oh, I know what it is. Someone recently shared with me a clip from Clue. She was the singing telegram in Clue.
Oh, God,
who gets shot?
Wow.
Weidlin.
Jane Weidlin.
Yep. And she was in Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home.
See, Jay, I don't think I think I feel like there's so many stories behind like how the singles first two episodes have gone for you, where it's just everything is so interlinked and windy and twisty and gets all back to itself, and there's so much of that in all of rock and roll and all of film and film about rock and roll that I don't see how you could. Yeah, I suppose you have to be
Ever end.
Yeah, it's infinite.
Yeah.
Right? And it's I don't, unless you're like I don't even know how you would make it wrong, because it's such a great story overall, all of it.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you want to be careful with certain things and maybe, just how you present it, but there's so much story behind all of it. I don't think you can go wrong.
No, and because there's always more to explore, and I think that's what got me going after months and months of being paralyzed by choice. The amount of options I had was I finally gave up on this doesn't have to be definitive anything. I'm not going to tell the full story from beginning to end of any given artist. When I finally landed on, I'm going to start with what's the era of music or this artist's career that is encapsulated with this movie. Then I got off my ass and started doing the work, because up until then I just felt this incredible pressure to well, if I leave something out, I'm going to be pissed later that I didn't do everything in that episode about that artist. And then I just realized no, the whole point now is the gimmick is the movie leads me into the story of the artist or the record label or MTV itself or whatever the fuck it is, whatever era I'm going to focus on. And I'm not responsible for anyone's life story. I'm responsible for whatever seems interesting for me to talk about naturally, and then get on with it. And then if I find something else, I can come back to it and make up another reason for another episode. There's a Soundgarden component, obviously, to the singles episode, but there's the whole ending of Soundgarden and the Audioslave era to the death of Chris Cornell that I saved to stop to be able to get through it, that I'm merging that with Guns N' Roses for the Vanishing Point episode, which is not a rock and roll movie, but Guns N' Roses incorporated the speech that the radio DJ gives in that film into one of their songs on Use Your Illusion 2, and Audioslave used footage from the film and recreated their own footage that looks like it's in the film for the Show Me How to Live video. So that's my excuse to get into those two chunks of the later part of those artists' careers that people don't usually talk about, because it's not the early days that everyone is used to talking about.
Is there a story of an artist that you want to tell, but there's just nothing available to tell? Like there's no movie. Yeah,
there I'm sure there will be, and I'll work it out somehow, or I'll just blatantly put it into an episode where I just flat out say there's no movie for this one. There's a lot.
Just use it as a 6 degrees of separation type of thing.
I mean,
there's something. There's always something.
Like the movie that I would like to see, just because I like the history of rock and roll.
Yeah.
Is Carl Perkins.
Sure.
Who is the godfather of rockabilly. I mean, he wrote Blue Suede Shoes. It wasn't
Sure.
Elvis. I mean,
Yeah.
so yeah, he's the one who kind of put rockabilly on the map.
Yep.
So I would love, I mean, because I've seen Perkins. I mean, when Luther Perkins died,
Yep.
he jumped right in there, and there was no relation between Luther and Carl Perkins. So Carl played for Johnny until. And the other cool part of that story is Johnny continued to pay Luther's widow as if Luther was still playing
great.
with him. So
Well,
but
I found it like I figured I would utilize some of those 50s hot rod rockabilly, juvenile delinquent movies
Sure.
to do more artists and just shoehorn them in there, for sure. When the time, because the whole history of Sun Records is fascinating. I can't get into that enough.
oh yeah, I
There's
love Sun Records.
there's the Johnny Cash Walk the Line movie that came out in the early 2000s, but I'll probably touch on that, but it's not as valuable to most people because they know it.
Yeah.
But what is more interesting to me is like, what films did Johnny Cash like show up in as a cowboy from time to time?
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a Roy Orbison movie about a guitar playing gunslinger that I've got to watch and do just a Roy Orbison episode.
Love Roy Orbison.
Yeah, and get into, maybe a little connection to like Blue Velvet or something like that. I know we talked about that before he died.
Well, like I don't know if like the Faster Pussycat Kill Kill Kill, those movies. I mean, there's some good stuff in there.
I love Russ Meyer. I love that movie so much. Yeah, go dancing. So I mean, I'm gonna do a surf episode that's also a Stevie Ray Vaughan episode for Back to the Beach, which came out in the 80s, which that has Stevie Ray Vaughan and Dick Dale playing together on the beach for like, I don't know how many seconds, but I've seen the footage, so I have to watch the movie. It's got fucking Paul Rubens and the Fat Boys.
God.
Holy shit.
Annette Funicello.
They just threw everything at that.
And the Beach Boys. Yeah.
Something's going to stick.
Yeah.
I mean, like what about like the parody, like Spinal Tap or as Walk Hard even has some great music in it. Some of it was just made for the movie. So I mean, they're great, like Starman at the end, which is David Bowie. There's some great music in that movie.
Almost Famous as well, for a 70s rock band that was fictional. That was really good. Yeah, there's a lot of those, and I guess I don't feel as under the gun to get into them, but they're always going to be there. Like I don't know. It's funny. Like all I have to do is get on iTunes or Apple Podcasts and just do a search for the name of a film and see how many other jackasses have already talked about how awesome it is. Like I don't know that I'm going to turn anyone on to Spinal Tap that doesn't already like Spinal Tap or hasn't heard it. But I don't know if that's what the world needs. But we'll see. I mean,
you could go off on a whole Michael McKean thing from there, or Christopher Guest. Even
I was thinking about that too. Yeah,
Mighty Wind.
Yep.
Mighty Winds, yeah, that's amazing. I mean,
Wild Stallions.
Good music movies that depict functional bands well. I think I was writing in my notes for the Runaways movie. This movie and Spinal Tap are two of the best at depicting conversations rock bands actually have. Spinal Tap and the Runaways, both like real gritty, emotionally charged, uncomfortable conversations that band members have with each other.
The question is, how much more black can it be? None more black. I mean, silly stuff that happens with bands is always great. So,
and it's so rarely depicted well. And what I'm finding is a lot of movies where one element is depicted well, one element is not.
Yeah.
Which ones depict a band performing like a band, even if they're actors? Which ones? Well, it's not worth mentioning because that's a real band that's being filmed, so that's not a great triumph or whatever. But, the Runaways movie, I was impressed with how well it depicted the hard work that someone does when they're on their way up and not really seeing any benefit from it, and the drugs and the partying, and how desperate and weird it is figuring those things out as a young person, and. Backbeat, the Beatles movie from the 90s was the best one I'd seen, I think, so far, depicting actors portraying a band. Right. They knew the guy playing Paul McCartney looked and sounded just like him, but couldn't play. So they barely show his hands. They're smart. The guy that plays John Lennon in it can play, and he's great. He looks and sounds like John. He went on to be like Professor Quirrell in the first Harry Potter film, the bad guy. That's all. And other than that, it's like a bunch of British TV,
What about there was a Beatles movie with Christopher Eccleston who played Lennon. I wish I could remember that, but I'd seen clips from it and it looked really interesting.
Was it a depiction of the Beatles or was it like about the Beatles? Because I saw
Well,
Yesterday, which is a romantic film with Ed Sheeran in it and some other people. But there's a guy that does a good Lennon in that in one scene. Spoiler alert for anyone that's not seen it. But I kind of roped that one into that episode because it was a fairly new movie and I didn't want to get that deeply into it. It wasn't a very deep film.
So it was called Lennon Naked.
Oh, I've heard of it, yeah, but I don't know anything about it.
So yeah, it was came out in 2010 apparently. So yeah, Christopher Eccleston played John Lennon. And who else was in there? So anybody? Andrew Scott played Paul McCartney. So if you know, oh God, now I'm trying to remember the nemesis of
Billy Shears,
Sherlock Holmes.
Moriarty. Yeah,
Moriarty. He played Moriarty in the Sherlock Holmes, the newer Sherlock Holmes series.
Yes, he's killer.
Yeah.
He was killer in that, and he was killer in. Oh my God, he was in Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah, he was just the thing. Most recently, I saw him in. He played a priest in Fleabag.
Cool.
Which is a really good TV show. Highly recommend.
what Fleabag?
Fleabag, yeah,
Yeah,
on
great
Amazon.
show.
It's on Amazon Prime.
Yeah, great show.
Yeah,
For a
and
long time, I'm going to be stuck watching documentaries and other music films, and I won't be able to poke my head out to see anything normal for quite a while. Unfortunately, I've got to watch a.
Did you see that there was a really cool documentary on that I saw also during the height of the pandemic about studio musicians, and they had the
Hired gun or
yeah,
Yeah.
which was really interesting, especially the guys who ended up playing for Billy Joel, who Billy Joel just completely fucked over.
I've argued about that a little bit because it's like, well, he was their employer and he cut them loose and he looked like a real dick on Entertainment Tonight in that footage going, well, I was tired of hearing it was all about the band, so I'm going solo, like I'm cutting the band loose because I'm tired of everyone telling me that I'm so good because my band is so good. And it's like, that's kind of his prerogative. But it's also funny to me because it's like such the opposite of a band like Kiss, where they struggled so hard to maintain the facade that the guys in the band were playing on the record when the guys like sucked after a while, and they wouldn't tell the kids that wasn't Ace Frehley playing guitar, but they would show up on stage with Ace Frehley, like, and Billy Joel being obviously the opposite guy. Like, well then fuck my band, like they can go do something else. But it's still like the flip side to what I was saying earlier of like, well, I'm just happy when any musician gets paid. Well, I'm also like, well, any job you have, any steady work you get for the same artist for a long time is sort of like a bonus compared to what everyone else goes through, for like an album, a tour. You have one band in the studio, you have one band on tour, and the next tour it's somebody totally different. I mean,
I think the only difference is with this is it's kind of like, because they were like all buddies. They were, I mean, it's like they were, from garage to playing clubs
arenas
to arenas.
But also,
So
there's also that, okay, I brought you with me. Now I'm cutting you loose. Go grow some fucking wings. Go get another gig. Because you can't. I mean, Bruce Springsteen did that in the 90s. Like, cut the E Street Band loose, and Max Weinberg had to go work for Conan for a while.
But there was a lot of interesting stories in that. I mean, even with
the filter guy. There was
the guy that ended up playing for Five Finger Death Punch, who ended up who was originally with Nine Inch Nails, and
no, it was a different guy. So Filter was Nine Inch Nails. That guy was like Hannah Montana's guitarist. And he went on to be in Five Finger Death Punch, I think is what it was.
Maybe, okay. But didn't he work for Reznor at some point? It's in like Reznor, because
that was more the guy from Filter, because he was on the
the
second album tour, the Wish era. He was in that band. Because I remember when he moved on, that guy named Robin Fink took over the guitars, and I read about him in Guitar Magazine. But yes, it was funny. It was a funny story, that film, because it was like 70s, Billy Joel. Oh, it's time to talk about Nine Inch Nails and Filter and Five Finger Death Punch now. And then meanwhile, we'll have like one quote from Rob Zombie. And I'm like, where the fuck's the rest of the footage of Rob Zombie? He's had a million sidemen. And I want to hear that story. But also, it was cool. But also there's a great one. Did you watch the Defiant Ones? That was an HBO thing a few years back.
No.
Jimmy Iovine, who he was like a engineer and an assistant in the studio back in the days of like Lennon's later work. and then he grew into the guy that produced like Stevie Nicks and Tom Petty, and worked with, I think he might have worked with Billy Joel, but he was like very much that same era as the guy in Hired Gun, that 70s New York era of recording studio work. And then he gets to a point where he starts his own company, and he works with Dr. Dre, who has his whole parallel story, and they weave them together, and then they form Interscope Records together.
Nice.
And they launch Nine Inch Nails' career after a bad deal that Trent Reznor signed. And Trent Reznor's in the documentary talking about his whole experience and how he just like, he was so happy to be off of TVT Records and get Pretty Hate Machine away from that evil company. And he just like handed them Broken, the second album, the EP rather, for nothing. Like this, like you can just have it if you'll put it out now. Put it out now. Like essentially saying this doesn't count towards my contractual obligation to Interscope. The next album, Downward Spiral, will. You can just have this as a freebie and let's get going here. You know, he liked them so much because Jimmy Iovine talks about meeting at Trent Reznor and said, he's like, what do you want? And Trent Reznor had never like had anyone ask him that before. You know, he's like, oh, well, I want to record my own music, and I want to put out the singles that I want to put out, and I want to put out the versions of them that I will remix, you know, in the forms that I want to. And he's like, okay, what else do you want? He's like,
full
I want
artistic control.
I want full creative control over all the artwork and how it's presented and how it's packaged. He's like, okay, what else do you want? He's like, I want to play with whatever musicians I want to. I want to hire them myself. I want to make the videos the way I want to make them and own all my stuff. And he's like, okay, yeah, what else do you want? And he's like, it's like
5 pounds of bacon.
Yeah,
would you like some money? We got some money back there, and that we got a room back.
Yeah,
Let's get some
but you
money
also
in there.
see Dre's career going along with it, and you see how Dr. Dre is a person who is, he's not Bruce Springsteen. He is not a songwriter at heart. He's a technician and a tinkerer, and he puts things together and he loops things, and he's all about this search for sounds and production.
Good talent finder.
And he gets to a point where he's just not putting out albums because he's so busy obsessing over details of like stuff in the studio that he's never happy with. And he's that guy. Like he's not going to be cranking out, songs anymore. He's going to be changing drum kits and re-recording entire records full of stuff that no one's going to hear.
Yeah, he's just producing. He's making the sausage.
It's the chase. It's not the catch with him. It's not. He doesn't move on. He doesn't have he has all the money in the world now. He doesn't have to have a deadline for anybody.
Right.
Which I assume that's what Hendrix would have done, because he was already edging towards that sort of mentality when he got his own studio and we had enough money to have creative control. Then it was like the deadlines didn't mean anything anymore, and he recorded 12 different versions of the same fucking song, and we've only heard like 2 of them. He had 3 records worth of shit that never came out in the short amount of time. After his 4th record was done, he still recorded albums worth of material that were in the vaults. Before he died.
Yeah, it's funny because you think about stuff like that where they do finally get their own, they make their own, build their own studio, and where they can take more time. Which I don't know that that's always good. You know what I mean?
Not always.
Yes, because I mean, if you're sitting around and not making anything, where sometimes you need somebody to light a fire under you.
Yeah,
not everybody works the same.
Not everybody can be Danny Elfman, which is
Or Prince.
or Prince. And Prince left a lot of stuff in the vaults too. Yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
But and that's it's funny. Like one of the first things I thought I was gonna do was gonna be a new wave episode, and I was gonna get into the Forbidden Zone, the Richard Elfman picture. If you haven't seen, it'll blow your mind. I know a lot of folks 10 years older than me that grew up watching that. I was, not privy to any of that cool shit when I was young, but I want to tell that story of Oingo Boingo and Danny Elfman's career, but I realize that most people don't care. Like they're not going to give a fuck. So I'm going to do that one after a good string of popular episodes, like these AC/DC episodes and my Janis Joplin episode are doing better than a lot of the earlier ones. And then I'm going to do probably a string of Doors episodes because I'm obsessed with the Doors. And there's so many things to talk about with them. But eventually, once I've got a few good ones in the can, I'm going to do a Danny Elfman Oingo Boingo episode that no one's going to fucking listen to. But
what
I will.
Actual fuck?
What'd you just find?
Mystic Knights of
Knights
the
of the
Oingo
Oingo
Boingo tour, the kinky realm of Little King Fausto, Hervé Villachez,
Yep.
and his queen, Susan Tyrrell.
Yep.
What the? I need to watch this.
It's amazing. Yeah.
But yeah,
It was-
I dig Elfman. I mean, everything that, I mean, because he works, he works with Tim Burton so often. And I mean, yeah, that would be an interesting one to see, is those guys like Elfman and, Copeland, Stuart Copeland
Oh,
is
yeah.
another good one, who's gone from playing in a band to being a scorer.
Mark Mothersbaugh, same thing. I mean, following in the footsteps of Danny, like he took the Pee-wee's Playhouse gig after Pee-wee's Big Adventure was Elfman, but the TV show went to Mark Mothersbaugh, who also went on to do, like, Nickelodeon cartoons like Rugrats and shit. Rugrats, the voice of Tommy Pickles in Rugrats, if you weren't a babysitter in the 90s, maybe like I was, you don't know this, but the voice of the main character of this highly popular cartoon show in the 90s is E.G. Daly, who was one of the girlfriends in Valley Girl, the most Valley Girl talking one, the grody, like, barf me out, like Grody to the Max girl. She's that chick who went on to do, she was in at least 2 Rob Zombie films. She was Candy, the prostitute at the ranch in Devil's Rejects, and she was the murderous, sexy clown in Rob Zombie's 31. She's been in a kabillion movies as a supporting player or like a sort of, character actor.
What's her name?
And E.G. Daly. If you look at her list of stuff on IMDb, it will, or Wikipedia is faster. You'll be amazed. And like she did, I grew up watching.
She looks like Tara Strong.
Tara Strong.
Also another voice actor. She does like Pinkie Pie, but she also she does a lot of voice acting. But as far, her big one is probably Pinkie Pie on the My Little Ponies.
Pony? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I could see that. Well, this. Yeah. She. Is also in Powerpuff Girls. So.
Yeah. Yes. And that's the kind of thing. Like my goal for interviews would be that. Like that would be a huge star for me to talk to about rock and roll and the movies she's been in. Like if I could get to that, at least like a established character actor who's, not a huge famous star.
So she was Dottie in Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Okay.
Yes, she was. That's another thing that made me think of her. Yeah.
I'm looking through her pictures. I'm like, oh, Dottie. I'm a rebel, Dottie.
Yeah, she was in Devil's Rejects and Babe and Better Off Dead, and I remember her. She's been in everything.
She sings too, and she sings this major turning point montage song in the movie Summer School. If you remember Chainsaw and Dave.
God.
Yeah. So when they all get their shit together and they're studying and they're taking the final test, there's a montage of "We're Gonna Do It" kind of stuff, and it's her song. We're doing what can't be done. Mind over matter. And there's a video for it. She's singing on a stage in a club, and the cast of the movie is like dancing under disco lights in front of her. And it's super, super low budge. And she's also, if you listen to the song now, it's so clearly just some producer taking the opening bass and drum riff from "You Spin Me Around" by Dead or Alive, and then just her singing a different part. I mean, not directly sampling it, but it's
close enough so that
fucking
it's
close. Yeah, let's just take
there
this.
could be a
blueprint.
lawsuit at some point.
I mean, they must have. Maybe they know whoever was in that band, or maybe the producer was somebody that produced that band. For all I fucking know. But yes.
By the way, going back for just a couple of minutes.
Sure.
Satisfaction. If you wanted to watch it, you could watch it on Fubo.
Oh, seriously?
Yep.
So not Tubi, which is free with commercials, but Fubo, which is a subscription service.
Right. It is a subscription service, but it's a pretty cheap subscription if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And I think you can get a week for free or something like that,
Okay.
or a month for free.
There we go.
Struggling so hard right now with YouTube TV and not being on a cable because I'm a sports guy and I love sports and
that'll do it.
I'm not getting
If it wasn't for sports and political brainwashing on cable news, there would be no cable packages sold to anybody anymore. It would
You're right. Like Root Sports and the Pac-12
no
network
Root
are holding out on a lot of the streaming services because of money. And
Sure.
Well, I'm sure they're going to have to figure something out because that's what's getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
And I think YouTube is probably making the biggest push for that. I mean, well, I mean, even there's Apple TV is trying to do the same thing, even though they're late to the game.
They're so proprietary and shitty though. Like their stuff is mostly in house or other things they buy. Like you can't. Yeah, the thing is, like, I mean, the last time, holy smokes, maybe might have been less than a year ago, but I won't bet on it. I had a lady over at my place during the pandemic. She was like, "Whoa, what's with all the physical media there, buddy?" Because I have like a bookshelf full of DVDs and Blu-rays, and I'm like, "Well, when physical media started like going the way of the dodo, it was fine because Netflix had everything."
Right.
And you just assumed that when a movie was on video, it would eventually be on Netflix.
Right.
And then every brand and evil corporation decided, oh, we can do this ourselves. And they split it all off. And now there's movies that like I would rent at Video Update for 99 cents for 2 tapes on a Tuesday that are going for $3.99 for a 3-day fucking rental on Amazon Prime that are, you know, shit from like the 60s and 70s. I'm not even good movies. Like they're putting the squeeze, and then it'll just disappear and go to another streaming service.
Here's something worse is that there are series of movies like some of the Marvel stuff.
Sure,
right?
your Star Treks or your James Bonds or
like Marvel, for instance. You can watch X show on Netflix and X show on Netflix, and then you have to jump over to Hulu to get the next movie in that story.
Sure.
And then you have to go over to Amazon to get the next story in that series.
Right.
I mean, can we go back to where cable was just fine and you needed HBO and Showtime? And
we thought we were getting something better.
God damn it.
Yeah. So real quick, if you wanted to know a way that you can record these streaming movies so that you can keep them, because with my other podcast Undisputed, I make promo videos out of each one, so I'll get clips from the movies and
you know how the kids are doing it on YouTube. Okay,
so you can use OBS, which is a streaming.
I have.
So you can use OBS and bring it up on. So you run an OBS in this on your laptop. You have a second window where you have your movie going. You can have OBS record that.
Oh no shit. Okay.
So that's kind of how I've been able to do that.
So I should say
torrenting.
I should say, yeah, I know. I have my Microsoft friends torrent things for me every now and then, which was funny. To go back to Airheads, when Dan and I did that on Christmas Day, like he couldn't even torrent it. Like we couldn't find it anywhere. And it's funny, like months later, it was streaming again somewhere. But I had to get the DVD from the Linwood library and bring it. Like it's one of those ones that you push it in and it just starts playing. There's like no menu. It just goes automatically.
Yeah.
But yeah, I started using OBS last year during the pandemic when I was trying to do some live broadcasty things, and I did a Halloween special. It's on YouTube. Just the worst ever on YouTube, or it's on my link tree. If you share any details in a text form, I'll have that link. But if you find me on Facebook, Jay Smith or Jay Smith, JayZemyth, I can send you to my YouTube. But I'm going to do more streaming on the week of Halloween this year, where I'm doing picture in picture. I'm doing some Elvira clips from MTV in the 80s because archive.org has VHS footage from MTV. I can't play any of the music. It gets struck down really fast. Right. I learned that the hard way. But I can play interstitials. I can play interviews. I can play the hosting segments from Elvira from various different years. I've got some Headbangers Ball footage of like Alice Cooper and Dave Mustaine and Iggy Pop on Halloween and shit like that. I'm gonna play.
Nice.
And then I'm gonna play some of that, and then I'm gonna go into reading short stories live. You know, some Stephen King, maybe some Ray Bradbury, maybe some Harlan Ellison kind of stuff. And like I did last year, and it should be fun. Hopefully it all works this time, but I haven't been in OBS for quite a few months, and I got to get used to it.
There's some good videos out there on how to do this. So,
yeah,
because that's how
I got playlists saved of tutorials, but they're from like 2 years ago, so now I don't even know if they're current anymore.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, and I may have stuff, so if hit me up.
Sure.
So
yes.
Or I may know how to get stuff because
I went live. Yeah, I went live on Facebook video streaming recently for the first time in a year to do some reading of a History of the Simpsons book. It was great. But I also I was freaking out because the audio is only coming out of one side, and I keep looking up how do I fix this problem. Everyone knows about the problem. All the explanations of how to fix it were from 3 years ago. and those controls are not available in live studio on Facebook anymore. You can't, like, the controls they give you now compared to a year ago are like, they're just like, do you want to start a poll? Do you want to start a contest? Do you want to engage with your audience somehow? Like, I don't want to engage with my fucking audience. I want to tell them what's entertaining and make them listen to me. And I want it to sound good out of both speakers, you asshole.
Well,
so now
because I mean we're using StreamYard right now, and we are streaming to Facebook, which actually, I mean, it connects to Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch, and LinkedIn for some fucking
really
reason.
okay.
Wait, whoa! I'm not allowed on LinkedIn.
That's okay. I don't have a LinkedIn account, so we're not.
Good luck ever getting a job ever again, Don.
I'm an electrician. I can get a job anywhere.
They don't
But
check
yeah,
your social media history before they have you go into someone's crawl space.
But yeah, the
Who
cool
says
part,
my
the
name
cool
is
part
really
about
Don?
the cool part with StreamYard here is that if you're streaming to those things, if anybody's on there, they can post questions, and you can, like, if something popped up, as an example, I'll just use this. Like if somebody posted a question, I'll just use this. I could show it on the screen just like that at the bottom where
Right.
I put the link. So, and if anybody wants to go to PodScure.com, that's where we are. So
You can find us here.
yeah. So, I mean, and you could do scrolling things. So, I mean, yeah, but yeah, if they put in a question, on there, then it'll, I can choose if I want to show it. We did a stream a couple weeks ago where we had somebody popping us up. Well, a guy from Common Ground Football podcast, who was one of our very first interviews that we'd done.
Brian? Was
Yeah,
that
Brian. Yeah. And he was popping up questions every so often. So.
Yeah, if I could figure out how to share these links that you're sharing in that other place, which one?
Yeah.
is it?
I was trying to find out if you could just share like a live. Can you just share like a live YouTube stream in Facebook nowadays instead of me going on OBS plus another platform? I think to make them go simultaneously to two different places at the same.
Yeah, Dean, I think we need to have another in-person sit down with my old untechnological ass.
Yeah, I mean, because the other thing you can do is use RTMP, which is like another tool that you can use if you're going to stream to different places that are not like Facebook or YouTube.
Yeah.
The Royal Mounted Yaxman. What?
Yep.
RTMP.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Real.
Is that a letter? That's a letter Kenny thing.
Real testicle
Letterkenny.
molestation protocol. So,
I think I have a dog that needs to.
do the thing.
Yeah, 'cause he's looking at me frantically.
Well, then,
And,
yeah,
oh,
I mean,
let me. Yeah, and
go ahead.
I will tell the story about yesterday next week
Okay.
because it's shitty.
All right.
Well, good.
Literally.
Good. I'll be gone.
Yeah, literally. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, fellas.
More of Don's poo hole. Yeah. Thanks for joining us. So, real quick, are you on social media anywhere?
Absolutely. Facebook, Jayzmyth, JayzemYth in the URL. If you find me on Instagram, it's just the worst ever. Like Instagram.com/just the worst ever. YouTube, I have a just the worst ever channel. I have obviously the podcast is on the podcasting platform. So that's most of it. I have a link tree link I can share if you are putting something out in text form.
Yeah, because I always do show notes. So I want to make sure that I get all your stuff. So yeah, if you want to shoot me that, then I'll make sure I get it in there.
I thought Linktree was only for people that had OnlyFans and naughty Twitter accounts.
Hey, don't judge Jay for what he does in his off
just-
time.
I'm not saying I don't. I'm not saying I don't have those
I'm
things.
implying that you might.
Can I just send this in a private chat with you right now?
You certainly can. Yeah,
Should I not look right now?
it's up to you. Copy, and then I will paste that somewhere. Bring up my notepad so I'll have it. Yeah, there we go.
Radio,
Thanks.
fellas.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll get that all in my show notes. But yeah, it's awesome. I mean, I love talking to guys about rock and roll because we're all rock and rollers. So you just can't get enough rock and roll. So
It's the best. It's the best thing ever. Yep.
most definitely. Oh, is TR coming in to say hi?
Too much metal for one hand.
Okay. And she co-hosts with me on How Are You Now, the Letterkenny podcast. And I produce one other podcast called the Boondocks podcast, where she is one of the hosts, one of 3. So
The
I'm
comic
a
strip
busy dude.
or the Troy Duffy film series.
Never mention Troy Duffy's name again.
The comic strip / TV series.
Right on.
So yeah.
All right,
that's-
everybody go watch Overnight, the documentary about Troy Duffy's fall from.
Oh God, that I hated him so much from the when he just can't. Stand
We
him.
almost made it out. I know, and I had to bring that up. But yes, that's another conversation for another day. That fucking scumbag.
God, just scumbag. Yeah.
All right, Don.
I'm not going to do another. I'm not going to do a sequel until my band gets signed. Go
Right,
fuck
right.
yourself.
All right, Don.
Take care,
do it.
fellas.
Yeah. So you got anything before we do our thing?
No, man.
All right. Well,
It's all good.
all right,
It's
well,
all good. Thank you, Jay.
yeah. Thank
And
you very
I hope
much.
to see
Absolutely.
you out in public sometime,
Public.
hopefully in the soon,
Hopefully,
sooner rather than later, because I'm getting really antsy, and
yeah.
it's
I've
He
been
can
at-
only be dancing by himself for
kinda
so
like-
often.
it's kind of like everybody has gone back into hiding for a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for good
You know.
reason. I mean, it's just, but it's also like I feel like this is sort of the last stop before the toll because winter's coming, and
Yeah.
it'll be more natural to sort of hide inside for the rest of the winter. I wouldn't mind if that's going to keep us all healthy.
I think it'll
myself.
keep. I think it'll keep more of us healthy because, as we know, the virus is much more active in cold.
Hmm.
So,
Yep.
let's hunker down for one more winter, and then we'll have a summer in the sun or something.
We'll do it
like
for
that.
real. Yeah,
down.
next spring I'll be ready to play shows again.
Yeah, and most of the people who won't get vaxxed will be dead by then. So, I don't want anybody to die, but if it's gonna
Speak
be
for yourself.
people. Hey, listen, I'm not gonna die. I'm perfect. I have all the best health. I eat the intervectamin and I drink
The
the bleach.
hamburgers.
It's fine.
All right.
Well, I guess we should say it, huh?
Yeah, we should eat bacon
Pet dogs.
and give hugs.
Please pet me. I'm working. Please don't pet me. I'm working.
All right, kids. We'll see y'all
Bye,
later.
everybody.
Bye.
Hey, thanks for joining us again. We would like to also thank our guest, and you will find all of their information in our show notes. We would like to thank Still Pluto and Crowender for our intro and outro tunes. You can find Still Pluto and Crowender on Spotify, YouTube, Pandora, and freemusicarchive.org. Our intro tune is My Own God by Still Pluto, and our outro tune is Be My Guest by Crowender. Take care.